Hello there and welcome back to the Sleep Science. Tonight we're venturing into that strange soft universe inside your skull, the one that hums quietly while you scroll, sigh, and forget why you walked into the kitchen. Your brain, this squishy electric coral reef, is the only organ that studies itself in the mirror, and it's constantly rebuilding you, bit by bit, in ways you barely notice. The truth is, every time you learn a song, unlearn an X, or just space out watching ceiling shadows drift, your brain rewires. It's less a static computer and more a self-sculpting garden with a billion restless gardeners pruning, connecting, and blooming around the clock. You probably won't survive this, at least not as the same person you were 5 minutes ago. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's oddly soothing to imagine this worldwide cluster of half-asleep minds listening together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you feel is motion, the faintest vibration behind your forehead, like a thought forming before it finds words. Your neurons are already firing in spirals, connecting through thin, glowing bridges called synapses. You picture them like city lights seen from an airplane window, billions of flickers mapping everything you know and everything you will someday know. The average brain holds about 86 billion neurons, each one gossiping with thousands of others. That's roughly the same number of stars in our galaxy, except these stars are in charge of your Wi-Fi password and the memory of your first heartbreak. Scientists once thought this shimmering galaxy was fixed. For centuries, the dominant idea was that adult brains were basically hardwired after childhood, a finished product, reliable but inflexible. It's an oddly comforting thought, the notion of being done, of not having to reconfigure yourself every day. But the truth? You are an ever-updating operating system, and neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire its connections, is your hidden update schedule. As you imagine your brain, picture it not as grey mush but as a glowing ecosystem. Tiny electrical pulses zip across synapses, strengthening paths you use often, letting neglected ones fade. It's a bit like city infrastructure. The more traffic a street gets, the more likely it is to be repaved, lit, and expanded. Meanwhile, those quiet side roads, say, the shortcut to remembering French verb conjugations, grow over with weeds. That's your brain economizing, pruning the underused to reinforce the useful. Historically, this revelation hit neuroscience like caffeine in an all-night lab. Back in the 1890s, Santiago Ramón y Cajal, the Spanish physician often called the father of modern neuroscience, was among the first to hint that neurons might adapt and grow new branches. His beautiful, almost artistic sketches of neurons looked like haunted trees, their branches touching but not quite merging. Even then, Cajal suspected those branches could sprout new growth. Still, his peers clung to the dogma that once your brain matured, it was as set as concrete. Historians still argue whether Cajal's warnings about mental stagnation were prophetic insight or just poetic phrasing, but either way he was right. Fast forward a century, and modern imaging has confirmed what intuition whispered. Your brain never stops reshaping. Stroke patients relearn how to walk. Musicians' auditory cortices expand with years of practice. Even London taxi drivers, famous for memorizing their city's dizzying map, show enlarged hippocampi, the region tied to spatial navigation. That chunk of brain literally grows to fit the mental map they carry. It's like installing a new room in your mind every time you master a route. Here's the quirky bit. Your brain is so enthusiastic about learning that it sometimes rewires even when it shouldn't. Phantom limb pain, for instance, happens when areas that used to control a missing limb get hijacked by neighbouring zones. The brain, ever pragmatic, says, well, this territory's free real estate, and moves in. It's both clever and cruel, your mind trying to heal itself into confusion. As you settle deeper into your pillow, imagine your own neurons doing their nightly maintenance. During sleep, especially in slow-wave stages, the brain clears metabolic debris and strengthens memories it thinks you'll need tomorrow. It's essentially curating your highlight reel. Every laugh, fear, or revelation is a potential new neural pathway under construction. You can almost feel the quiet hammering of synapses tightening their bonds. Right now, you might think of a random skill, say, tying your shoes, or the way you automatically reach for your phone when bored. Each of those habits is a well-trodden neural path. The first time you did it, neurons fired awkwardly, uncertainly, but with repetition their electrical chatter became smoother, faster. The brain learned, this is useful. Keep it. That's neuroplasticity on autopilot. Of course, all this rewiring comes with a paradox. The same plasticity that makes change possible also cements bad habits and anxious loops. The brain doesn't moralize, it just practices whatever you repeat. So if you rehearse worry every morning with your coffee, congratulations. Your neurons are becoming Olympic-level warriors. That's why self-awareness, mindfulness, and even silly rituals like gratitude journals aren't fluffy trends. They're neural interventions. You're telling your brain, please, build this path instead. Think of yourself not as a passenger inside your skull, but as its interior designer. You choose which rooms get more light, which corridors expand, which doors quietly close. Every thought is a blueprint, every repetition a renovation. You're not simply shaped by experience, you're sculpting experience itself. And the best part, there's no final version. Your brain remains deliciously unfinished, humming with potential. Even now, as you listen, circuits are reshuffling to remember the rhythm of this voice, the tone of these words, the slight tug of curiosity pulling you toward the next section. The work of being you never stops, not even in sleep. Somewhere, deep inside, a spark jumps a gap between two neurons that have never spoken before. They exchange an electrical handshake, a tiny, nice to meet you. And in that moment, a new you is born, microscopic, invisible, yet profoundly real. You drift deeper into the hum of your own thoughts, the glow of neurons dimming into an older, slower rhythm. Somewhere in this current of electric murmurs lies the first spark of it all, the origin story of how the brain became this restless, self-editing masterpiece. It didn't start as a mind, of course. It started as something simpler, squishier, and far less poetic. A bundle of cells that just wanted to survive. Imagine yourself billions of years ago, a tiny organism floating through warm primordial seas. You don't yet have thoughts, or fears, or opinions about decaf coffee. You have only reflex. Move toward food, away from pain. That's it. Over eons, those reflexes tangled into primitive circuits, little feedback loops that began to predict, anticipate, remember. The first neurons appear, cells specialized for sending signals faster than diffusion ever could, and with that single upgrade, life gained the ability to learn. A simple worm could now remember which corner of the petri dish had sugar. Congratulations, plasticity had entered the evolutionary chat. As you float through this mental timeline, picture those first neurons like flickering lanterns under deep ocean water, firing tiny messages of go, stop, ouch, or yum. They connected into chains, then clusters, then networks. The jellyfish was among the first creatures to boast a nerve net, an early neural web without a brain center. No headquarters, just a democratic blob of sensation. Historians still argue whether the rise of centralized brains was inevitable or just a quirky evolutionary accident, a sort of cosmic let's see what happens if we bunch the control center in the head. By the time you reach early vertebrates, those clusters of neurons have coalesced into something that almost resembles the modern brain, a spinal cord topped by a bulbous control dome. Fish, amphibians, reptiles. Each iteration added a little more wiring, a few more feedback loops, a touch more, what if I try that again? You can almost feel evolution learning on the job, but humans are where it all goes gloriously haywire. Your brain becomes a layered lasagna of ancient and new circuits. The reptilian brain managing instinct, the limbic system handling emotion, and the wrinkled neocortex perched on top like an overqualified manager trying to keep everyone on task. It's a miracle that these layers cooperate at all. You want to diet, but your limbic system just spotted cookies. Your prefrontal cortex sighs, the reptile inside you hisses, and somewhere in the mess, a decision gets made. For most of history, though, people didn't imagine this complex negotiation happening in the skull. The ancient Egyptians thought thoughts lived in the heart. The brain, they believed, was just filler. They even scooped it out during mummification because in their view it was useless goo, charming but wildly inaccurate. Meanwhile, Greek physician Hippocrates proposed something radical for his time, that the brain was the seat of sensation and intelligence. Aristotle disagreed, calling it a radiator to cool the passions of the heart. You can almost see the ancient debate club. Gentlemen, my cranium is clearly for temperature regulation. Fast forward to the 17th century and meet René Descartes, who declared that mind and body were separate substances. The famous, I think, therefore I am. His model compared the body to a machine, with the brain as the control panel. It was a clever metaphor for its day, but it planted the idea that brains were like clockwork, precise, predictable, mechanical. For centuries, this metaphor dominated neuroscience. The brain as a static device, its gears set by age 25, and any damage irreparable. And here's where the story takes a strange, almost poetic turn. In 1897, the Italian scientist Camillo Golgi invented a silver staining method that made individual neurons visible under a microscope. The result? A forest of glowing branches so beautiful it made rival scientists gasp. Ramón y Cajal, the Spanish artist doctor from before, used that same stain to draw neurons with exquisite detail. Those drawings are still framed in medical museums, tiny ink universes on parchment. But the two men disagreed passionately. Golgi insisted the brain was one continuous mesh, a single sprawling network. Cajal argued it was made of separate cells talking across invisible gaps. Historians still argue whether their feud was friendly competition or pure academic drama, though Cajal's view, the neuron doctrine, eventually won. Here's a curious tidbit. Cajal believed that through willpower and mental exercise, the human brain could grow new connections. He urged students to cultivate discipline as a way of physically reshaping their neural structure. This wasn't metaphor. He truly thought effort could sculpt tissue. For decades, that idea was dismissed as mystical nonsense. But then came the 20th century experiments. Rats learning mazes, monkeys retraining after injury, human stroke patients regaining function. And Cajal's nonsense started looking suspiciously like prophecy. You can feel this revelation rippling outward through the decades, shaking old metaphors apart. The brain wasn't a static machine, it was an organic cloud, shifting shape in real time. Every habit you form, every emotion you replay, every mistake you survive, each leaves faint footprints in your neural sand. Close your eyes and imagine those first footprints forming. A thought sparks, a connection strengthens, a pattern repeats. The network thickens, reinforced by practice and emotion until it becomes a pathway. That's the architecture of identity, growing one impulse at a time. And yet, for all its sophistication, your brain remains haunted by its evolutionary past. The reptile still whispers, the mammal still yearns, and the philosopher still wonders why. You are both the architect and the ancient clay. A fun modern twist. Neuroscientists now use brain organoids, tiny lab-grown blobs of neural tissue, to study early development. They spark, they respond, they even form rudimentary connections. Somewhere in a petri dish, neurons are dancing their first clumsy dance of thought. They don't yet think in any conscious sense, but they echo the dawn of every brain before yours. It's eerie and beautiful, like watching creation on loop. If you could whisper to that tiny cluster of cells, what would you say? Maybe, keep evolving. You're going to do incredible things someday. You'll learn to paint sunsets, to build skyscrapers, to cry during sad movies, and to wonder who you are. Because that's what the first spark led to. Not just survival, but reflection. A living system that can imagine itself. The brain became more than a control center. It became a storyteller, looping its own origin myth. And tonight, as you drift towards sleep, that story keeps writing itself in the quiet static between your ears. Each night, the oldest parts of your brain, those ancient circuits that learned to flee predators, still hum beneath your dreams. They are the original engineers of thought, the ones who taught your modern mind the fine art of being alive. You are in every sense the heir of that first spark, a living continuation of billions of tiny decisions made by molecules that once floated aimlessly in the dark. And even now, your neurons are lighting up in gratitude just to remember where they came from. You're floating again, somewhere between a memory and a pulse, watching your neurons get ready for their next performance. They're restless little dancers, each one a spotlight waiting for the cue. When they fire together, they learn together. When they fall out of sync, they forget. It's the brain's most famous choreography, synaptic plasticity. And it's happening right now behind your eyes, even as you wonder what you'll dream about later. You can imagine it as a slow-motion dance floor. Each neuron stretches a long arm, its axon, toward another, releasing a flurry of chemicals across a microscopic gap. That gap is the synapse, and it's where the magic happens. If the signal gets through often enough, the connection strengthens. The dance becomes smoother, faster, more automatic. When it's neglected, the floor goes dark, the music fades, and that particular move is forgotten. You're not just watching this happen, you are it. Every skill, every habit, every flicker of personality is a practice step in this ongoing neural waltz. Early neuroscientists didn't quite realize what a party was going on. They saw neurons under microscopes, sure, but they assumed the connections were relatively static, wired early, used forever. It wasn't until the mid-20th century that a Canadian psychologist named Donald Hebb proposed something revolutionary. His theory, still quoted in neuroscience lectures today, boiled down to one simple line: cells that fire together, wire together. In other words, the more two neurons chat, the stronger their bond becomes. Hebb's rule became the golden law of learning. You could almost imagine it written in neon letters above every classroom. Repetition is renovation. Historians still argue whether Hebb meant his theory metaphorically or literally. Some claim he was describing a general principle of learning, not a biochemical blueprint. Others insist he foresaw what modern imaging would later prove: real, measurable growth in the strength of synaptic connections. Either way, he was right enough that neuroscientists still use Hebbian learning to describe how brains, and even artificial neural networks, teach themselves through repetition. Yes, even your phone's predictive text owes a nod to the same principle. When it keeps guessing that you'll text LOL after "that's wild," that's a microdose of Hebbian plasticity at work. Now imagine your own mind's dance floor again. A thought flickers. Say, you're learning to play piano. The first time your fingers stumble across a key, neurons in your motor cortex and auditory cortex try to sync. The timing's off, the rhythm awkward. But as you repeat the motion, press, hear, adjust, the synapses involved start firing more smoothly. Your brain lays down myelin, a fatty coating that insulates the circuits, making them faster. Practice literally wraps your thoughts in biological upgrades. That's why the same tune that once felt impossible eventually flows like second nature. You don't think. Your neurons do the remembering for you. The process works in reverse too. Neglect a skill long enough, and the connections weaken, pruning themselves away. Neuroscientists call this synaptic pruning, a kind of neural spring cleaning. It sounds sad, but it's necessary. Without it, your brain would be a tangled jungle of outdated information and useless reflexes. You'd remember every bad password you've ever typed. Your neurons, thankfully, are minimalist decorators. They keep what you use and recycle the rest. Here's a quirky fact. The teenage brain is particularly ruthless about pruning. During adolescence, the brain eliminates nearly half of its synapses, sculpting itself for adulthood. It's why teens can pick up skills absurdly fast, and also why they sometimes act like emotional fireworks. The brain is literally rewiring itself mid-sentence. Historians still argue whether that pruning window ever fully closes, or whether adults can reopen it under special conditions like meditation, psychedelics, or deep learning. The debate is fierce, but the hopeful consensus is this: pruning slows with age, but it never stops. You can always teach an old neuron new tricks. Picture that pruning like a gardener at dusk, quietly clipping away tangled branches. Each snip is a forgotten language, a faded reflex, a hobby you swore you'd get back to someday. But the gardener's goal isn't loss, it's clarity. The remaining branches grow stronger, the roots deeper. Your sense of self becomes both leaner and more defined. It's why you can outgrow certain fears, or evolve your taste in music, or suddenly realize you don't need to respond to every text immediately. That's pruning too. Every time you focus on something, a scent, a sound, a thought, you're whispering to your neurons, build this bridge stronger, and they obey. The neurochemical messenger glutamate floods the synapse, triggering receptors to open, ions to flow, and new spines to sprout. Over hours or days, those spines stabilize into sturdy synaptic highways. It's molecular construction, happening while you scroll through memes. The more emotional or meaningful the experience, the more permanent the pathway. Your brain loves drama. It upgrades whatever feels vital. Of course, this can be a double-edged sword. Trauma can carve deep grooves that the brain struggles to overwrite. It's why certain sounds, smells, or phrases can jolt you back to a moment long past. The same learning mechanism that teaches joy also teaches fear. But it's also the path to healing. By revisiting and reframing memories, new circuits can override the old. Therapy, journaling, even slow breathing. Each one is a tiny choreography of neurons relearning safety. You're not erasing old dance steps, you're teaching your brain new rhythms to prefer. Here's a lighter fact to tuck under your pillow. Musicians, dancers, and even cab drivers have visibly different brain structures in the regions they use most. MRI scans reveal thicker grey matter in those specialised areas, proof that practice leaves physical footprints. The violinist's motor cortex hums with extra connections. The ballet dancer's cerebellum fine-tunes balance at hyperspeed. Your own neural architecture reflects your life's playlist. What you repeat, you become. You might wonder, does all this rewiring make the brain chaotic? Not quite. It's more like a jazz improvisation, structured freedom. There's rhythm, but also spontaneity. Synapses form, fade, and reform in endless riffs, always chasing harmony. That's why learning feels both exciting and exhausting. Your neurons are literally performing all night. And here's a charming fringe tidbit. Some researchers have proposed that spontaneous daydreaming serves as a kind of rehearsal for plasticity. When your mind wanders, it may be testing out new neural combinations, playing what if in the dark. You could call it mental doodling. Your brain is never idle, it's just warming up for the next number. So tonight, as you let your thoughts drift like lazy dancers under dim lights, remember that every repetition, every focus, every gentle letting go is part of your brain's choreography. The music never stops. The neurons bow, adjust, and begin again. You don't control every step, but you do choose the song. Somewhere in the quiet, a new connection hums to life. A neuron whispers to its neighbour, and a tiny spark leaps the gap. The synaptic dance continues, endlessly reshaping the choreography of who you are becoming. You wake inside your own memory, a smaller version of yourself, soft-edged, curious, maybe sticky with grape juice hands. Everything around you feels oversized, the furniture, the sounds, even your emotions. That's the landscape of the childhood brain, wildly unfinished, gloriously unstable, a construction site under eternal sunrise. If adult minds are sculpted marble, the child's brain is wet clay that hasn't decided what shape it wants to hold. Neuroplasticity at full throttle. You can almost hear the neurons buzzing like a beehive. In the first years of life, your brain fires off up to 1 million new synapses per second. That's not a metaphor, that's literal molecular fireworks. Every smell, every face, every jingle from a cereal commercial leaves a spark somewhere in that growing web. The sensory world doesn't just entertain you, it builds you. Your first language, your first fear of the dark, your first taste of ice cream, all carved into fresh neural circuits that would later form the blueprint of you. For most of history, people assumed childhood learning was just practice, not physiology. But modern imaging has shown the toddler brain is like a sponge that keeps squeezing and refilling, expanding at a dizzying pace. By age 3, it's already at about 80% of its adult volume. That explains the toddler's superpower, to absorb without trying. You see a ball once, and it's yours forever. You hear a word twice, and it becomes part of your permanent vocabulary. It's learning without effort, memory without strategy. Here's one mainstream fact that still amazes researchers. Children can recover language and motor functions after brain injuries that would leave adults permanently impaired. The left hemisphere might take a hit, and the right steps up to help. The wiring doesn't ask permission, it just adapts. That's childhood plasticity, reckless, improvisational, unstoppable. Historians still argue whether this flexibility fades because of biology, or because modern life trains us to use narrower circuits. Maybe adulthood is less about losing plasticity, and more about falling into cognitive comfort zones. You stroll through the sensory carnival of your early brain. Colours louder, textures louder, even boredom louder. The world is a full volume experience. When you fall off your bike, you don't just feel pain, you record it, building avoidance pathways that say, let's not crash like that again. When you get a hug, your brain floods with oxytocin, encoding safety, trust, and love. Each repeated pattern, comfort, risk, reward, etches deeper grooves into the mental soundtrack that will play for decades. A quirky tidbit: psychologists once thought babies couldn't feel pain because their nervous systems were too immature. That theory, common in the 1950s, led to surgeries on infants without full anesthesia. Horrifying, yes, but it also showed how deeply we misunderstood the child brain. Turns out infants feel pain more intensely because their inhibitory circuits aren't developed yet. Their world is raw, unfiltered data, everything at once. That overload, paradoxically, might be part of what makes early plasticity so fierce. With no filters, the brain must adapt fast just to survive. Now picture your young neurons branching like ivy across a wall. Some shoots find light, useful skills, comforting faces, and thicken into vines. Others wither. Childhood isn't just about growth, it's about pruning, the great neural gardener at work again. Around age 5, your brain begins trimming redundant connections to make room for efficiency. It's as if the mind takes a deep breath and says, "Okay, let's keep the stuff we actually use." Language learning, for instance, narrows to the sounds you hear most. That's why adults struggle to pronounce foreign phonemes. The brain quietly closed that construction site years ago. You can test it. Try rolling an unfamiliar sound, like the guttural R in French or the tonal slides of Mandarin. Feel how your mouth fumbles. That's not laziness, it's history. Somewhere, a cluster of neurons that once fired for every possible sound decided to retire early. But here's the comforting part. With patient repetition, you can still reawaken them. Adults just need more practice, more feedback, more deliberate attention. Childhood plasticity is fast but messy. Adult plasticity is slower but more strategic. There's a scene in this mental documentary where you're learning to walk. Your tiny legs wobble, your head's too heavy, gravity mocks you, and yet you persist. Each fall refines the model. Neurons in your cerebellum, basal ganglia, and motor cortex adjust the balance equations. Within weeks, you're upright, strutting like a miniature emperor. That's plasticity at its purest. Repeated failure, fine-tuning success. You could call it evolution condensed into baby steps. A fun modern fact: researchers at Harvard once recorded the neural activity of children playing peekaboo and found bursts of synchronized firing between visual and emotional centers. The brain was learning not just object permanence, mum still exists when hidden, but social timing, humor, and suspense. You were literally giggling your way into complex cognition. Who needs calculus when hiding behind a blanket can rewire empathy? The emotional landscape of childhood is equally crucial. Each burst of joy or panic trains the amygdala, the brain's emotional switchboard. A comforting parent teaches your circuits that stress can subside. A chaotic environment trains vigilance instead. Those early lessons become lifelong reflexes, and yet they're not destiny. Neuroplasticity means even these deep grooves can soften with awareness and time. It's never too late to relearn safety. Remember your first classroom, the smell of pencil shavings, the chalk dust halo, the hypnotic tick of the clock. Those mundane details embedded in your hippocampus, stitched to emotions that made them stick. Maybe a teacher praised your drawing and suddenly art felt like oxygen. Or maybe someone laughed at your answer and a tiny neuron decided public speaking was dangerous. Each event a vote in your evolving personality election. Here's the whispery truth underneath all the data. Children don't just absorb facts, they absorb moods. A calm home wires calm circuitry. Constant shouting wires alarm systems. The architecture of love and fear is built early, but, say it with me, it's all still under renovation. Adults carry those blueprints, but neuroplasticity means they can remodel the rooms whenever they choose. Somewhere inside your skull, the child version of your brain still exists. Not literally, but in legacy circuits. The same ones that loved discovery, that felt awe at a falling leaf, that learned without trying. You can visit that version anytime. Daydreaming, play, curiosity, they're the adult keys to reopening those early doorways. So you wander through that mental playground one last time. The swings creak, the neurons shimmer like soap bubbles in sunlight. You realize the lesson is simple. Your brain never really stopped being young, it just learned better handwriting. You're standing now in the hazy space between memory and myth. The age when everyone told you, the brain stops changing after 25. You remember hearing it somewhere, probably from a teacher, a news article, or one of those self-help paperbacks with a stock photo of a sunset on the cover. It sounded authoritative, comforting even, that one day your neurons would simply harden into final form like cement setting in the mould of you, and if you were unlucky enough to develop a bad habit or regret before the mould dried, well, too bad, you'd be stuck with it forever. Except, science had other plans. For most of the 20th century, neuroscientists clung to what was known as the static brain hypothesis, the belief that once development was over, no new neurons could form and no major rewiring could occur. It was tidy, predictable, and absolutely wrong. But for decades, the myth persisted because it was convenient. It made identity feel stable. It told doctors that recovery after brain injury was hopeless. It told adults to stop trying new things. And it told you, quite falsely, that change was only for children. Historians still argue whether this misconception lasted so long out of scientific conservatism or sheer human laziness. Either way, it took a handful of brave researchers to finally pry the myth open. The first cracks appeared in the 1960s when a neurobiologist named Joseph Altman at MIT observed newborn neurons in adult rat brains. He published his findings, but the scientific establishment shrugged. Rats, after all, weren't people, and microscopes back then couldn't capture the elegant detail of living tissue. So Altman's discovery slipped quietly into the footnotes of neuroscience history, like a firefly seen but not believed. Fast forward to the 1990s, when imaging technology had become sharp enough to illuminate brain cells in full technicolor. Enter Elizabeth Gould, a Princeton neuroscientist who revisited Altman's forgotten experiments. Using improved techniques, she confirmed that new neurons do form in adult mammalian brains, particularly in the hippocampus, the region responsible for memory and learning. This wasn't just theoretical, it was visible proof. The adult brain wasn't fixed, it was alive, renovating itself like a 24-hour construction site. And then, in 1998, a landmark study shook everything. Researchers discovered evidence of adult neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons in human brains. Imagine the scientific gasp. It was like discovering your house quietly builds new rooms when you're not looking. Suddenly, all those fatalistic notions about aging minds felt embarrassingly outdated. Here's the mainstream fact everyone remembers. The adult hippocampus continues to generate new neurons throughout life, though at a slower pace than in youth. Those newborn neurons integrate into existing circuits, subtly rewriting memory, emotion, and creativity. In short, your mind doesn't just repair, it renews. And yet, for every accepted truth, there's always a lingering debate. Some researchers in the 2000s questioned whether adult neurogenesis in humans was as robust as in rodents. Were those newly seen cells actually functional neurons or just cellular ghosts? The debate continues. Historians and neuroscientists still argue whether our species keeps this regenerative spark burning in full adulthood or whether it dims with age. But even among skeptics, one thing is agreed upon. The brain's ability to reorganize itself, even without new cells, is undeniable. You picture it happening quietly in your own skull. When you learn a new language, when you quit a bad habit, when you fall in love with something unexpected, your neural maps redraw themselves. Regions that never spoke before start trading information. The circuitry that once screamed with anxiety starts humming instead with curiosity. It's not just neurons growing, it's neurons collaborating differently. Here's a quirky tidbit for your nightstand trivia. Taxi drivers in London, the ones who memorize the knowledge, a 25,000 street map of the city, develop enlarged hippocampi compared to average drivers. MRI scans prove it. Their brains literally bulk up in response to mental training. When they retire, those regions shrink again, like unused muscles. The brain, ever practical, adapts to the job. That same flexibility has inspired therapies for people recovering from strokes. The old dogma once said, if you lose function in one hemisphere, you're done. Now, rehabilitation programs encourage the unaffected hemisphere to take over. It's not perfect, but it's progress. Brains are sneaky that way, always looking for detours when old roads are blocked. It's strange to think how recently all this became common knowledge. Before neuroimaging, mind over matter sounded like philosophy. Now it's measurable physiology. We can watch meditation thicken grey matter. We can watch learning a new skill activate dormant networks. Even the act of imagining movement lights up motor regions almost as strongly as real motion. athletes visualize, musicians rehearse silently, and their brains quietly respond, noted, updating files. Of course, if neuroplasticity is real, and it is, it means identity itself is more fluid than we're comfortable admitting. The you that you swear by isn't a fixed personality, it's a living consensus, constantly renegotiated by experience. One sleepless week, one heartbreak, one new hobby, and the architecture of your thoughts begins to tilt. Maybe that's terrifying, or maybe it's liberating. You can almost hear your neurons gossiping about it. New policy from HQ. Emotional regulation is the next renovation project. And somewhere in your prefrontal cortex, a tiny construction crew gets to work, patching leaks and rerouting circuits that used to flood with panic. The process is slow, sure, but it's relentless. Think of your mind as an evolving city. Old neighborhoods, habits, beliefs, memories don't just disappear, they're remodeled. The library that once stored your teenage angst might now be a cozy cafe of self-awareness. The alleyway of fear becomes a park of patience, its urban renewal at the speed of thought. There's one experiment that always sticks in the collective imagination. Blind participants trained to read Braille showed increased activity in their visual cortex, the part of the brain that normally processes sight. Deprived of its usual input, the region rewired itself to interpret touch instead. That's not metaphor, that's reallocation. Your brain refuses to waste real estate. And here's the kicker. Neuroplasticity isn't a special skill, it's default mode. Every new experience you have tonight, every sound, word, or shiver is modifying the circuitry that receives it. Right now, as you listen, your auditory cortex is tuning itself to the cadence of my voice, mapping comfort onto rhythm. A few neurons have already added this sound to their playlists. So when someone says, "People never change," you can gently smile and think, you clearly haven't read a neuroscience paper since 1950. Because change isn't just possible, it's happening constantly. You're a living draft, not a final copy. And if the myth of the fixed brain once gave us the illusion of stability, the truth of neuroplasticity replaces it with something even better: possibility. You are, every second, a masterpiece in progress. Neurons humming, pruning, stretching toward tomorrow's version of you. You hover now at the microscopic shoreline where chemistry and electricity mingle, the frontier between thought and molecule. It's quieter here, like standing in a tide pool and listening to the current hiss around shells. Every idea you've ever had, every decision you've second-guessed, began as a small storm of charged particles leaping from one cell to the next. Neuroplasticity doesn't happen in some mystical vacuum. It happens through chemistry, messy and magnificent. You can imagine a single synapse in cross-section. One neuron, the sender, packages its signal into tiny bubbles of neurotransmitter molecules. They drift across the narrow synaptic cleft and knock on protein doors on the receiver neuron. If enough of those doors open, an electrical wave ripples down the second cell's membrane. That, in a nutshell, is a thought. Chemical gossip traded at lightning speed. When you learn something new, these synapses remodel themselves, and the remodeling depends on your brain's internal weather. Hormones, sleep patterns, even what you had for dinner. Dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, glutamate. They're the architects and demolition crews of memory. A surge of dopamine, for example, tags an experience as rewarding. Build this pathway stronger. Norepinephrine adds urgency, marking what's important for survival. And glutamate, the star of the show, triggers the molecular machinery that grows new receptor sites. It's neuroplasticity's favourite fuel. But too much chemistry can tip the scales. Excess glutamate, released during stress, can overexcite neurons until they burn out, a phenomenon called excitotoxicity. Your brain, for all its genius, is a bit of a drama queen. It learns best in moderation, thriving in balance between boredom and chaos. That's why mindfulness, gentle challenge, and sleep all protect your wiring. They keep the inner tides from flooding the circuitry. Here's a mainstream fact to keep on the mental shelf. During sleep, particularly slow wave and REM phases, the brain consolidates memories and flushes out waste products through a system called the glymphatic network. Cerebrospinal fluid literally washes through the neural tissue like a midnight janitor, clearing metabolic clutter. Historians still argue whether Aristotle's idea of sleep as digestion for the mind was coincidence or ancient intuition, but he wasn't far off. You wake lighter because your neurons spent the night doing housekeeping, and the chemical cleanup continues even as you sit here breathing. Each inhale changes the brain's pH slightly, which alters neuron excitability. Each sip of water or bite of chocolate adds new molecules for those neurons to rearrange into mood. It's humbling to realize that your grandest ambitions rely on calcium ions shuffling through microscopic gates. A quirky tidbit: the first antidepressant wasn't designed for the brain at all. In the 1950s, a tuberculosis drug called iproniazid accidentally boosted patients' moods so dramatically that doctors thought they'd misdiagnosed the infection. Turns out it inhibited the breakdown of serotonin and dopamine. A side effect became a revolution, proving that tiny tweaks in neurochemistry could reshape personality itself. From that moment, the chemical self became part of modern identity. The idea that who you are can shift with molecules. You can almost picture your neurotransmitters as colours swirling in a glass of water. Stress releases cortisol, tinting the mix darker. Laughter sends endorphins, brightening it again. Over time, repeated moods recalibrate baseline chemistry. Chronic stress, for instance, keeps cortisol high enough to shrink dendritic branches in the hippocampus, your memory hub, while simultaneously bulking up the amygdala, your fear center. The architecture literally bends toward worry. But give that same brain rest, kindness, or exercise, and the chemistry rewrites itself back toward calm. Your emotions aren't abstract, they're construction signals. Let's zoom out for a second. When you learn a new skill, say juggling or speaking Italian, your neurons must agree on timing. They use electrical pulses called action potentials, tiny voltage changes that travel like domino waves. Each pulse triggers neurotransmitter release, which triggers the next pulse, and on it goes. To strengthen a circuit, neurons need to fire in synchrony. This is called long-term potentiation, discovered in the 1970s at the University of Oslo. It's the chemical signature of learning, the brain's way of saying, yes, keep this connection, it's important. Historians still argue whether the discovery of a long-term potentiation or the later mapping of the human genome was the bigger scientific turning point for understanding identity. One unlocked the biology of heredity, the other the biology of memory. You, meanwhile, benefit from both every time you recall a password or recognize an old friend's voice. The chemistry of change doesn't just happen in neurons, though. Glial cells, long considered mere support staff, play a hidden starring role. Astrocytes regulate neurotransmitter levels, mop up excess ions, and even whisper instructions to nearby synapses about which connections to keep. Recent research suggests they may coordinate learning across entire brain regions. Think of them as stage managers, keeping the dancers on beat. And then there's sleep again, the nightly rehearsal where the brain's chemistry resets. During REM, acetylcholine spikes while serotonin dips, creating a dreamlike state where emotional memories replay safely. Your brain basically runs simulations, testing new associations, discarding clunky ones. You might dream of missing a train or arguing with a sea turtle. Nonsense, but necessary nonsense. Each scene tweaks neural chemistry toward balance. Here's another quirky piece of trivia. Chocolate genuinely boosts blood flow to the brain and triggers small releases of serotonin and anandamide, the bliss molecule. That's right, your midnight snack is a mild neurochemical intervention. You're welcome. And yet, for all this complexity, the rule remains elegantly simple. Neurons that are nourished, rested, and challenged will grow. Those neglected or flooded by stress will retract. You're the gardener and the weather system all at once. Imagine now that each breath you take gently stirs those molecular tides. Oxygen fuels mitochondria inside neurons. ATP sparks the pumps that reset ion gradients, and the entire network hums back to equilibrium. Even in perfect stillness, your chemistry is painting new layers of self across your synapses. When people say, change your mind, they usually mean opinion. But here, in this quiet biochemical surf, you realize it's literal. Every thought, every emotion, every act of forgiveness or frustration reshapes the brain's chemistry just enough to tilt tomorrow in a new direction. So as you drift tonight, think of your inner ocean, neurotransmitters ebbing and flowing, glial waves polishing memory stones smooth. You're both storm and shoreline, molecule and meaning. The chemistry of change keeps rolling, endlessly sculpting the neural beach that tomorrow's you will wake upon. You find yourself standing in a corridor that feels part hospital, part art studio, sterile white walls streaked with colour, as if someone has been painting recovery itself. This is the space where injury meets adaptation, where neuroplasticity stops being a theory and starts being a lifeline. You can almost hear the quiet determination humming beneath the fluorescent buzz, neurons trying to reroute, muscles waiting for orders, minds learning how to remember again. The brain, for all its elegance, is fragile. A stroke, a concussion, a severed pathway, and suddenly, familiar actions vanish like text deleted mid-sentence. But here's the astonishing part. Loss often awakens creativity. Damage is not the end of function, it's the beginning of rerouting. Neurons are opportunists. When old roads collapse, they start paving detours, stringing synapses across unexpected neighbourhoods. You've got civil engineers up there working overtime. Take the mainstream historical fact that changed everything. In the mid-20th century, doctors believed that once a region of the brain was destroyed, its function was gone forever. Then came cases that defied the textbooks. One famous example, British neuroscientist Oliver Sacks wrote about a blind painter who continued to create astonishing portraits decades after losing sight. His visual cortex, instead of going dormant, began to interpret tactile and memory cues. He wasn't seeing in any conventional sense. His brain was translating. Another classic, stroke survivors retraining themselves through constraint-induced movement therapy. The principle sounds almost cruel. Bind the healthy limb so the injured one must work. But it forces the brain to remap motor commands. Over weeks, dormant circuits awaken. The brain doesn't regenerate lost tissue, yet it learns new choreography around the scar. Rehabilitation becomes less about fixing and more about improvisation. Historians still argue whether early physiotherapists realized how revolutionary this was, or stumbled onto it through trial and error. Either way, it redefined recovery. The idea that function could migrate, that language might move from left to right hemisphere, or that touch could replace sight, was a revelation. Now drift closer to the sensory edge of this corridor. A patient sits with electrodes gently buzzing across the scalp. It's neurofeedback training, watching brain waves in real time and learning to nudge them. The screen flashes when calm focus appears, rewarding the pattern until it strengthens. It looks like a video game, but underneath, neurons are building new communication lines. Rehabilitation meet play. Here's a quirky fringe tidbit to file under miraculous but true. Researchers once fitted blind participants with camera-equipped belts that translated visual input into vibrations on their skin. After months of use, brain scans showed activity not just in the touch centers, but in the visual cortex. The brain had reassigned meaning to sensation. In essence, they were seeing through their stomachs. You can't make this up. The paper was real. The results astonishing. It makes you wonder how many senses the brain could invent if given the right translation devices. Smell that reads temperature, hearing that decodes color, the blueprint's already flexible. The possibilities feel endless. Meanwhile, in a quiet therapy gym somewhere, a stroke survivor grips a rubber ball for the 1,000th time. You can almost feel their frustration, the slow burn of muscles relearning trust. Yet each squeeze sends signals screaming up the spinal cord. We're still here, still trying. Each repetition strengthens surviving synapses, encourages neighboring neurons to take over. The progress looks invisible, until one day the fingers move smoothly and the room erupts in quiet applause. It's easy to romanticize recovery, but the truth is less cinematic. It's boredom, repetition, fatigue, tears, and behind it all, microscopic fireworks of rewiring. Rehabilitation is neuroplasticity performed in slow motion. You might pause and think about your own small recoveries, the way you adapted after heartbreak, after a loss, after the year that nearly broke you. Emotional trauma rewires too. MRI studies show that therapy, journaling, and even storytelling can shift activity from the amygdala, fear, to the prefrontal cortex, reason. Healing is not just feeling better, it's reforging circuitry. There's poetry hidden in that. You can't erase pain, but you can train your brain to route around it, to carry it differently. Just as a river carves new channels after a landslide, your mind finds gentler paths through memory. That's recovery, the art of redirection. Let's not forget the pioneers who taught science to hope again. Paul Bach-y-Rita, often called the father of sensory substitution, once helped his own father regain mobility after a debilitating stroke using homemade rehab equipment. Later, he invented the tongue display unit, a device that converts camera images into patterns of gentle electrical stimulation on the tongue. The user's brain interprets those tingles as spatial information, vision by taste. It sounds like science fiction, yet it worked. Historians still debate whether Bakirita's early experiments were pure science or part crusade, but they undeniably proved a principle. The brain is not limited by its inputs, it's limited by imagination. And there's another layer, psychological resilience. Patients who believe improvement is possible show more rewiring on scans. Expectation modulates chemistry. Hope itself becomes a therapeutic signal. In that sense, optimism isn't naive, it's neurological. A joke to soften the lab lighting. If neurons had social media, they'd constantly post, "New connection request accepted." Because that's what injury triggers, networking at its most literal. Damaged cells call out chemical SOS signals. Nearby neurons extend dendritic arms like friends showing up with casseroles. It's cellular community service. You imagine leaving the therapy ward and walking into daylight. Every sound, every step feels newly significant because you now know that behind each moment lies adaptation. The brain's resilience isn't about invincibility, it's about resourcefulness. Somewhere in your own history you've done this without noticing. Learned to use your non-dominant hand when the other was injured, found new words when grief stole your voice. Those weren't just coping mechanisms, they were neuroplastic rewrites. The same principle that lets a pianist recover dexterity after a stroke lets you recover confidence after loss. So you stand in that bright corridor one last time, feeling the hum of persistence all around. Machines click, voices murmur, neurons whisper across the divide. The message is the same in every dialect of biology. There is always another pathway, and you, rewiring quietly as you listen, are living proof. You find yourself now in a quieter space. No hospitals, no electrodes, just the soft rhythm of your own breath. The air feels heavier here, like concentration condensed. This is the place where effort transforms into structure, where repetition turns biology into belief. Neuroplasticity isn't only about recovery, it's about practice. And practice, it turns out, is how you rebuild who you are one deliberate thought at a time. You picture your brain as a gym, except the weights are habits, and the mirrors reflect your attention. Every time you focus on something, playing guitar, learning a language, remembering to pause before replying, you're lifting neural barbells. The repetition strengthens synaptic pathways the way push-ups strengthen muscle fibers. You can almost feel your neurons grunting in microscopic unison, muttering, "Again? Really? Okay, fine." Here's the mainstream fact. Neuroscientists have confirmed that consistent, focused practice literally changes the brain's physical architecture. MRI scans of musicians, athletes, even London cabbies, all show thickened cortical regions associated with their specific skills. The more you repeat an action, the more insulation, called myelin, wraps around the neurons involved. Myelin is the brain's way of saying, "You've earned the fast lane." Signals travel smoother, faster, with fewer mistakes. That's why experienced pianists can play complex pieces with their eyes closed. Their neural highways are freshly paved. Historians still argue whether the phrase "practice makes perfect" came from ancient Greek philosophy or medieval monastic training, but either way, neuroscience has finally validated it. Practice doesn't just improve performance, it rebuilds identity. You are the sum of what you repeat. You might chuckle, remembering the first time you tried anything new, maybe juggling, coding, meditation, or parallel parking. At first, your neurons fired chaotically, a digital static of, "Wait, what are we doing again?" But then repetition smoothed the static into signal. It's like watching a city grid emerge from chaos. The more you practice, the brighter those neural streets glow on the map. Eventually, the skill moves from conscious struggle to unconscious competence. That's neuroplasticity's endgame, automation. And yet, there's a trap here. The brain doesn't care whether what you practice is helpful or harmful. It reinforces whatever you feed it. Ruminate on worries every morning, and you'll become fluent in anxiety. Rehearse frustration during traffic, and your amygdala will bulk up like a gym bro of anger. The mind's gym has no moral compass, it just records reps. That's why mindfulness and intention matter so much. It's not about suppressing thought, but choosing which mental weights to lift. If you train gratitude, compassion, curiosity, your neural wiring will echo those states more readily. They become your default emotional posture. Think of it like teaching your brain better form. A quirky tidbit. In the 1990s, researchers asked a group of volunteers to mentally practice playing piano. No fingers on keys, just imagination. After weeks, brain scans showed changes nearly identical to those in participants who practiced physically. Visualization alone had strengthened the motor circuits. You can literally think yourself into skill. Olympic athletes use the same trick. Mental rehearsal primes the neural networks as effectively as actual movement. Your neurons, it seems, can't tell the difference between imagination and experience, so you decide to test it. You close your eyes and imagine tying your shoes slowly, precisely. You can almost feel the friction of the laces, the tug of the knot. Your motor cortex lights up faintly, tiny echoes of real motion fluttering behind your forehead. You're not moving, but your neurons are rehearsing in silence. The act of imagining is already changing your circuitry. This is the secret at the core of every discipline. Boredom is the price of mastery. The brain craves novelty, but it's repetition that forges skill. Every time you push through monotony, you're convincing your neurons that this pattern is worth preserving. Boredom is just your mind yawning while your synapses work over time. Historians still argue whether Zen monks or early modern soldiers were the first to formalize repetitive training as spiritual discipline. Either way, repetition became sacred long before neuroscience explained it. Monks chant to synchronize breath and thought. Athletes drill until motion replaces mind. Both are sculpting the same thing: efficient circuitry. Here's something quietly beautiful. Habit formation doesn't just reshape the brain, it reshapes time. Each habit you master frees up mental bandwidth, allowing you to layer more complexity. The pianist no longer thinks of notes, they think of emotion. The driver no longer thinks of mirrors, they think of destination. The neural pathways built by repetition become scaffolds for creativity. But let's make this personal. Think of a habit you've built recently. Maybe drinking more water, writing daily, scrolling a little less. That invisible effort has a home in your basal ganglia, the part of the brain that handles automation. Every time you repeat the act, dopamine fires as a tiny reward signal. Over time, the habit becomes self-sustaining. You crave the satisfaction loop itself. Congratulations, your neurons just installed a behavioral shortcut. Of course, practice has a darker twin: overtraining. Push too hard and plasticity starts working against you. Burnout isn't just fatigue, it's the brain saying, "We've laid enough asphalt for now." Rest becomes as vital to learning as repetition. During rest, neural pathways consolidate, pruning weak signals and reinforcing strong ones. Sleep, again, is the ultimate teacher's assistant. A joke drifts through your tired synapses. If neurons had union rules, they'd demand mandatory naps between every rehearsal. And honestly, they'd be right. What's fascinating is that boredom, rest, and repetition all rely on the same molecular machinery. Those bursts of dopamine, serotonin, and BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, the protein that encourages neuron growth. You're not just practicing a skill, you're dosing your own biochemistry. Is also why breaking a habit feels so excruciating. You're not fighting willpower, you're fighting wiring. Old circuits don't vanish instantly, they fade with disuse, like overgrown trails in a forest. The key isn't to bulldoze them, but to build new paths and walk them more often. That's how addiction recovery, mindset shifts, and creative reinvention all work. New routes eventually become home. As you let these thoughts settle, the air in that mental gym grows still again. You realize that practice is less about achievement and more about identity maintenance. Every small repetition, writing one sentence, breathing consciously once, forgiving once, tells your brain, "This is who I am." Somewhere in your cortex, a few neurons nod in agreement and tighten their bonds. A microscopic cheer erupts. You've just practiced change, and the change has already begun. You wander now into softer terrain, a place where thought feels thicker, slower, more emotional. The gym lights of practice fade behind you, replaced by the pulse of something subtler, the quiet sculpting of feelings. This is the workshop of emotion and memory, the duet that shapes who you believe yourself to be. If neurons are dancers, then mood is the music, sometimes calm, sometimes chaotic, always rewriting the choreography in real time. Inside your skull, emotion and memory are next-door neighbours who share too much gossip. The hippocampus records events. The amygdala decides how important they are. The stronger the feeling, the louder the amygdala shouts, "Keep this one." That's why you can remember where you were when something thrilling or terrible happened but forget what you had for lunch 2 days ago. Emotion is the glue of memory. You can almost feel it now, the amygdala lighting up like a flare, calling attention to moments it considers crucial. This is evolutionary efficiency. The brain learns fastest from what shakes it most. It's the reason fear and joy carve such deep grooves, while neutral moments slide off like water on wax. Historians still argue whether emotion precedes thought or vice versa, whether we feel first and explain later, or rationalize before feeling. William James, the 19th century psychologist, once proposed that we don't cry because we're sad, but that we feel sadness because we cry, a bold reversal for his time. And even now, neuroscientists bicker over the chicken and egg timing of emotion. The debate, charmingly, remains unsolved. What we do know is that your mood can remodel your memory circuitry as effectively as any workout. Chronic stress, for example, floods the brain with cortisol, shrinking dendrites in the hippocampus and beefing up connections in the amygdala. The result? You become excellent at remembering threats and terrible at remembering calm. It's like your brain enrolled in a masterclass on panic. But the opposite holds too. Practices that lower stress, mindfulness, laughter, time in nature, release serotonin and oxytocin, which coax the hippocampus to grow new spines. Emotional balance literally nourishes neural growth. The cliché "a happy brain learns better" is not just motivational poster fluff, it's measurable biology. A quirky tidbit. In the 1970s, researchers discovered that when rats were given toys, tunnels and other enrichments, their brains developed thicker cortices than those in barren cages. Enriched environments made their neurons sprout extra branches. Later studies found the same effect in humans who engage regularly with art, music, or social play. Joy itself became a structural nutrient. You could call laughter the original brain fertilizer. Picture your own neural landscape when you're in love or inspired. Colours seem brighter, ideas come faster, even food tastes better. That's dopamine and norepinephrine flooding your prefrontal cortex, enhancing pattern recognition and curiosity. The chemistry of affection temporarily upgrades your perception hardware. On the flip side, heartbreak dulls the same circuits. Everything looks grey because, biochemically, it is. Neuroplasticity doesn't discriminate, it amplifies whatever mood dominates. And so, emotion becomes the sculptor of identity. Every recurring feeling leaves fingerprints across your neural clay. Anxiety deepens pathways toward vigilance, hope toward resilience, gratitude toward empathy. You rehearse your emotions the same way you rehearse skills. Feel something often enough, and it becomes your default neural posture. The catch: the brain prefers familiar patterns, even painful ones. That's why breaking emotional cycles feels like betrayal. It's evicting old tenants from long-term leases. Here's the hopeful twist. Awareness itself begins the renovation. Simply noticing an emotional loop activates the prefrontal cortex, which sends inhibitory signals to the amygdala. The more often you observe without reacting, the weaker the old pattern grows. Mindfulness isn't mysticism, it's manual override. You can test it right now. Think of a recurring irritation, traffic, deadlines, that one friend who types in all caps. Feel the first flicker of annoyance rise, then breathe. As you do, you're engaging the vagus nerve, slowing your heart rate, whispering to your limbic system, "Stand down, soldier." The more you practice that pause, the more your neural wiring learns calm as default. Eventually the trigger still arrives, but the response feels optional. Historians still argue whether ancient Stoic philosophers like Epictetus understood this mechanism intuitively. Their practice of separating perception from reaction mirrors modern cognitive behavioral therapy. 2 millennia before fMRI, they were already hacking plasticity with pure reflection. Here's a fun contemporary note. Neuroscientists at UCLA once found that simply labeling an emotion, saying "I'm angry" instead of just stewing, reduces amygdala activation. It's called affect labeling. Words apparently are tiny neural sedatives. That might explain why journaling or venting to a friend feels so relieving. Language recruits logic to quiet the limbic storm. There's humour even in the biology. If your amygdala had a personality, it would be that friend who overreacts to every text. Did you see that? We're doomed. Meanwhile, your prefrontal cortex rolls its metaphorical eyes and replies, "Relax, it's just a shadow." The trick is getting them to collaborate instead of bicker. Emotional intelligence at its core is interneural diplomacy. And then there's memory, the echo that emotion leaves behind. Every recall isn't a replay but a rewrite. When you remember something, your brain briefly destabilizes the memory trace before storing it again. Each recall is a chance for editing. That's how therapy works when you revisit painful events. You're literally resaving them with different emotional metadata. The story changes, and so does the structure. Imagine your memories as old vinyl records. Each time you play one, it picks up a bit of dust, a new crackle, maybe a different tone. Eventually, the song remains recognizable but softer, less sharp. That's neuroplastic mercy, time smoothing the spikes of feeling without erasing the melody. You sit now in this emotional atelier surrounded by sculptures that pulse faintly with color. Some are shaped like joy, some like fear, some like quiet forgiveness. They are all you, layered across years of repetition and reinterpretation. And here's the most soothing realization of all. Emotions aren't intruders to be managed. They're collaborators in your evolution. Every feeling you've ever survived has taught your neurons how to respond more wisely next time. The emotional sculptor never stops working, and neither do you. So you exhale once more, long and slow. Somewhere deep inside, the amygdala flickers, hesitates, and settles back into calm. Another pathway rewires. Another self takes shape. You can feel the rhythm shift again, like your heartbeat sinking to a slower drum. We've spent so much time exploring the fireworks inside your skull that it's easy to forget. Your brain doesn't float in isolation. It's tethered to a body that breathes, moves, digests, and dreams, every signal weaving back and forth like tides between shore and sea. This is the body-mind feedback loop, the constant conversation between flesh and thought that quietly redefines what it means to feel alive. You might have been taught to think of the mind as a thing that lives behind your eyes, commanding the rest of you like a puppet master. That's the old Cartesian myth again, the ghost in the machine. But modern neuroscience tells a different story, one where the brain listens as much as it speaks. Sensations from your skin, muscles, and organs feed into your consciousness, shaping emotion, attention, even personality. You don't just have a body, you are one. Consider the vagus nerve, that wandering highway running from your brainstem down through your chest and gut. It's the body's secret hotline, carrying 80% of its traffic from the organs to the brain, not the other way around. When your stomach tightens before an interview, or your chest loosens after a hug, that's the vagus whispering status reports to headquarters. The brain reads these updates and adjusts its chemistry accordingly. It's why you can sometimes think your way into calm by simply breathing slower. Each breath sends the memo upward. All systems stable. Here's a mainstream fact that still astonishes first-year med students. Your gut contains about 100 million neurons, more than a cat's brain. This enteric nervous system operates semi-independently, managing digestion and mood. 90% of your body's serotonin is made there, not in your head. No wonder anxiety feels like a stomachache, and comfort food earns its name. You are, quite literally, thinking with your intestines. Historians still argue whether ancient healing traditions like Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine somehow sensed this feedback system long before microscopes. They spoke of gut fire and energy meridians, metaphors that now sound suspiciously like early guesses about neural pathways. Science finally caught up with intuition and gave it Latin names. You start to notice how every movement echoes in your brain's architecture. Walk briskly, and your hippocampus releases BDNF, that growth factor fertilizer we met earlier. Stretch, and your parietal cortex recalibrates its body map, refreshing spatial awareness. Even subtle posture shifts send new sensory data upward, slightly altering mood. The loop never breaks, it just hums quietly beneath awareness. Here's a quirky tidbit. Psychologists have found that simply adopting a power pose, standing tall, shoulders open, for 2 minutes, can nudge hormonal balance toward confidence. The body sends physical signals that the mind interprets as authority. The effect isn't magic, it's feedback. The same works in reverse. Slouch long enough, and your brain starts composing sad poetry uninvited. Athletes understand this dance intuitively. The runner who repeats strides until they blur into meditation. The swimmer who finds transcendence between strokes. Each is tuning the dialogue between muscle and mind. Endorphins, dopamine, rhythmic breath, proprioceptive feedback, a biological symphony fine-tuning focus. Exercise doesn't just tone muscle, it sculpts emotion. Historians still debate who first noticed this connection. Ancient Greek physicians promoting mens sana in corpore sano, or early yogis mapping breath to awareness. Either way, the wisdom has survived because the biology keeps proving it right. Movement rewires mood. Then there's the heartbeat, that metronome for consciousness. Researchers at the University of Sussex discovered that people who can sense their own pulse, what scientists call interoceptive awareness, tend to show stronger emotion regulation and empathy. The simple act of noticing your body's rhythm strengthens the neural bridge between feeling and reasoning. It's mindfulness in cardiac form. A joke flits through your thoughts. Maybe that's why heartbreak hurts so much. The organ and the metaphor share the same plumbing. Now imagine lying still, eyes closed. Each breath expands your lungs. Tiny stretch receptors send messages through the vagus to the medulla. The brain slows the heart, releases acetylcholine, drops cortisol levels. You're performing biofeedback without even realizing it. Meditation, deep breathing, gentle yoga, all these mind practices work because they trick the body into telling the brain a calmer story. The loop can misfire, of course. Chronic stress reverses the direction. The brain floods the body with adrenaline until muscles tighten. Digestion halts. Immune defenses falter. It's like a feedback microphone screeching on stage. The fix isn't only mental, it's physical. Shake, walk, stretch, laugh. Movement resets the loop. A mainstream study from 2014 found that even forced smiling, biting a pencil between your teeth to mimic a grin, reduces stress markers. Your body doesn't wait for authenticity. It improvises happiness and lets the brain catch up. That's neuroplasticity's sense of humor. And here's a fringe gem. Researchers exploring embodied cognition have shown that gestures influence abstract reasoning. Move your hands expansively while explaining a concept, and your brain literally broadens conceptual associations. Think small, gesture small. The boundary between metaphor and muscle dissolves. You can test the loop right now. Place a hand on your chest and feel your pulse. Slow your breathing until your exhale lasts a little longer than your inhale. Notice the tiny delay between breath and heartbeat, the vagus doing its work. While you focus there, neurons in your insula, the brain's interoceptive hub, light up, quietly refining their map of the body. That's plasticity in its most intimate form, awareness reshaping anatomy. The deeper you listen, the more you sense how identity extends beyond the skull. Your body isn't just the vessel carrying the brain. It's the context that teaches the brain what being means. Each muscle, memory, each heartbeat, each flutter of digestion feeds the narrative you call me. So the next time you catch yourself calling your body clumsy, tired, or slow, remember, it's been co-authoring your mind since before you could speak. The loop between heartbeat and thought never stops writing, never stops revising. You are both poem and pulse. And somewhere inside that endless feedback, a new thought forms, quiet and steady. Maybe self-care isn't indulgence. Maybe it's neuroengineering. You drift into sleep's softer architecture now, the gentle hum beneath consciousness, where dreams assemble themselves like origami made of memory. You've crossed into the territory where logic loosens and the brain begins its nocturnal construction work. You don't control the tools anymore, but your neurons certainly do. They're filing, copying, shredding, and rebinding the day's events with the patience of librarians on night shift. If waking life is rehearsal, then sleep is editing. The human brain devotes about a third of its life to this silent workshop, and every minute counts. During deep non-REM sleep, the hippocampus replays experiences in tiny electrical bursts, whispering them to the neocortex for long-term storage. It's the nightly backup process. What you keep becomes memory. What you lose becomes mystery. You can almost see it. Flickers of yesterday's conversations, half-remembered smells, fragments of songs, all being sorted into tidy neural folders. Dreaming, particularly during REM, adds the remix. Those bursts of rapid eye movement signal a shift from logic to creative chaos. The brain combines unrelated fragments. Your old classroom merges with a spaceship, your grandmother chats with Beyoncé, and somehow the absurdity has meaning. It's not nonsense, it's neural jazz. By making new associations, dreams test the brain's flexibility. When you wake with a bizarre yet profound idea, that's neuroplasticity's nocturnal signature, a mainstream fact. In the early 1950s, researchers Eugene Asarinsky and Nathaniel Kleitman discovered REM sleep by accident while measuring their subjects' eye movements. They noticed patterns of brain activity almost identical to wakefulness. Before that, scientists thought sleep was a shutdown. The discovery changed everything. It turned rest into revelation. Historians still argue whether Sigmund Freud's theory that dreams reveal disguised wishes was psychological insight or pure poetry. Modern neuroscience gives him partial credit. Emotion does drive dream imagery, but the content is less secret confession and more emotional filing system. The amygdala and hippocampus trade stories until the chemistry balances out. Dreaming also rehearses fear safely. Soldiers, students, and performers alike experience anxiety dreams before big events. The brain simulates threat to prepare calmly for the real thing, an evolutionary training ground. Experiments with virtual reality nightmares, yes, that's a thing, show similar patterns. Practice stress, and the brain's panic response eases next time. Nightmares, it seems, are unpleasant but educational. Here's a quirky tidbit. During REM, your body is effectively paralyzed by the pons, a brainstem structure that inhibits motor neurons. It's a built-in safety feature so you don't act out dreams. Without it, you'd be kicking your lamp every night. Occasionally the timing glitches. When you wake before the paralysis fades, you experience sleep paralysis, that eerie state of awareness without movement. Cultures throughout history blame demons or aliens. Neuroscience just calls it lag. While your body lies still, your brain is anything but. Glial cells clear out toxins, cerebrospinal fluid surges like a tide, and memory circuits pulse in rhythmic waves. It's cleaning, rehearsing, and renovating all at once. You could say sleep is neuroplasticity's night shift, paid in melatonin instead of money. There's a romantic edge to this biology. Painful memories, for instance, often feel softer after sleep. The emotional charge fades because REM decouples feeling from fact, refiling the memory minus the sting. That's why sleeping on it works. It's cognitive therapy disguised as bedtime. Historians still debate who first suspected this connection between dreaming and learning. Some credit Aristotle, others cite early Islamic scholars who described sleep as the polishing of thought. Either way, they noticed that new skills come easier after rest. Modern studies confirm it. Practice a piano sequence or a language before bed, and performance improves overnight. Your neurons are rehearsing while you drool on the pillow. Dreams also act as playgrounds for creativity. Paul McCartney once claimed he dreamed the melody of Yesterday. Chemist August Kekule dreamt of a snake biting its own tail, and woke realizing the ring structure of benzene. The brain's night work doesn't follow logic, it follows possibility. You could call it the imagination's night shift. Here's a quieter fact. Your sense of time in dreams collapses because the prefrontal cortex, the rational clock keeper, takes a break. That's why entire adventures unfold in seconds. The brain records emotions and scenes, not chronology. When you wake, you're left with emotional residue instead of narrative clarity. You lie there in that half-sleep state, the border between dream and dawn. Your breathing evens out, and you can almost feel the synapses cooling from their all-night frenzy. The hippocampus hands off one last memory packet to the cortex with a satisfied sigh. Another update complete. A joke drifts by. If neurons had time cards, they'd clock out around sunrise complaining, "Boss, you wouldn't believe the symbolism we had to process tonight." Yet there's something profound about this routine. Every morning you awaken as a slightly edited version of yourself. Yesterday's neural drafts have been redlined, reformatted, refined. The brain that meets the day isn't the same one that went to sleep. Scientists call this synaptic homeostasis. It means the brain trims excess connections each night to prevent overload. Without that pruning, signals would blur like a radio stuck between stations. Sleep resets sensitivity so learning can continue tomorrow. It's the closest biology gets to forgiveness, and forgiveness is what dreaming often delivers. People who've lost loved ones sometimes dream of them vividly, conversation intact. Those dreams don't erase grief, but they integrate it, stitching acceptance where shock once lived. The neuroscience behind that remains partly mystery. Historians and researchers still argue whether such dreams are mere psychological comfort or an evolved coping mechanism. But the outcome feels the same. The brain mends itself with story. You turn slightly, maybe smile. Somewhere in the folds of your cortex, a dream you can't recall has already made you kinder, more adaptable, more you. Neuroplasticity never clocks out. It just changes uniform for the night shift. So the next time you wake remembering nothing but a blur of colours or the echo of laughter, know this. Even if the plot vanished, the rewiring stayed. Your brain rebuilt a little while you weren't looking. You wake to a soft electric hum. Not from within you this time, but from the world you've built around you. The faint buzz of your phone, the screen glow of a smartwatch tallying your heart rate, the phantom vibration you swear you felt but didn't. Welcome to the age of deliberate plasticity, a time when technology doesn't just reflect your mind, it reshapes it. The air feels charged, like a lab and a cathedral combined. Everywhere you look, there are devices designed to alter the way neurons fire, headsets that deliver microcurrents to improve focus, virtual reality programs that trick the brain into rewriting trauma, algorithms that learn your patterns faster than you can say, "Wait, who's training who here?" You are, quite literally, living inside the first generation of humans who can engineer their own neuroplasticity. Let's start with the mainstream fact that cracked open this frontier. In the early 2000s, scientists began using transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, to treat depression. A coil placed near the scalp creates brief magnetic pulses that excite neurons in the prefrontal cortex, the brain's command center for mood regulation. For some patients, this non-invasive jolt reignited circuits dulled by despair. It wasn't science fiction, it was neuroelectric gardening. Historians still argue whether the discovery was a triumph of neuroscience or a happy accident from physics labs dabbling in biology. Either way, it birthed a revolution in brain modulation. Today, TMS has cousins: TDCS, transcranial direct current stimulation, focused ultrasound, even light-based therapies. They all rely on one principle: energy can guide neurons to fire together, and as you know, neurons that fire together wire together. But technology doesn't stop at the scalp. Deep brain stimulation, a more invasive cousin, implants electrodes directly into neural tissue to alleviate Parkinson's tremors or obsessive-compulsive spirals. The first patient to receive such an implant reportedly wept, not from sadness but from sudden clarity, as if static had been cleared from her mind's radio. Her neurons had been given rhythm again. Here's the quirky part. Researchers noticed that stimulation didn't just treat symptoms, it improved unrelated functions like decision-making and motivation. The brain's networks, it turns out, don't recognize our tidy diagnostic categories. They crosstalk like old friends at a reunion, one spark lighting several bonfires at once. You can almost picture the future version of this: a neural app store where you download focus, empathy, or creativity updates. It sounds dystopian, but elements already exist. Neurofeedback headbands, marketed for meditation, let you see your own brainwaves in real time. When you calm your thoughts, the feedback changes. Birds chirp, waves smooth out. You're training your neurons like pets, rewarding desired behavior until it sticks. A fringe tidbit that feels more like prophecy. A few years ago, researchers connected two rat brains via computer interface. When one rat learned a maze, the other miles away navigated it instantly. Data transferred from brain to brain. Later, similar experiments with humans using EEG and magnetic pulses allowed simple signals, move left or yes, no, to pass between participants. Telepathy via Wi-Fi. Primitive now, but the foundation is laid. You shift slightly, imagining where that could go. Could empathy become uploadable? Could languages download overnight? Historians will one day argue whether this was the dawn of enlightenment or the soft apocalypse of individuality. For now, it's just raw potential humming in the circuits. Then there's virtual reality, the mind's favourite playground. Strap on a headset and your neurons happily believe you're walking through mountains or floating underwater. The visual cortex doesn't care whether photons come from sunlight or LED screens, it reacts the same way. That's why VR therapy can help phobia patients confront fear safely, or stroke patients retrain mobility using virtual limbs. The illusion becomes instruction, and instruction becomes recovery. You remember the mirror box therapy invented by Vilayanur Ramachandran for phantom limb pain. A simple mirror reflected a healthy hand to appear as the missing one. Patients moved it, saw it move, and the brain finally relaxed its false alarm. That was VR before headsets, an analog trick exploiting the same neural gullibility that makes virtual worlds believable. A joke hums through your mind. If neurons had Instagram, VR would be their favourite filter. Everything looks real enough to wire. The tech extends to sound and light too. Binaural beats, slightly offset frequencies played to each ear, can nudge brainwaves into desired rhythms. Alpha for calm, beta for focus, theta for that drowsy creative drift. Even LED masks that flicker at gamma frequencies are being studied for Alzheimer's prevention. The pulsing light seems to restore synchronization lost in the disease. Imagine healing through flicker, rewiring through rhythm. Of course, technology isn't always a benevolent sculptor. The same algorithms that learn your habits can entrench them. Scroll loops, notification dings, infinite feeds. They're training your dopamine system just as surely as therapy retrains your fears. Your thumb swipe is a form of conditioning. The glowing rectangle in your hand is a portable Skinner box. You are, in a sense, co-writing your neurochemistry with the machine. Historians of the future will probably debate whether this era made us more connected or more conditioned. Some already call it the attention economy, but it's really neuroplastic capitalism, companies competing to occupy your synapses. The more time you spend in their loops, the stronger those neural pathways become. It's not manipulation, it's mutual evolution. Still, the story isn't grim. Technology can also reverse the cycle. Apps that teach breathwork or gratitude literally retrain attention toward peace. Games that reward focus and kindness build the same circuits that therapy aims to strengthen. You can choose which algorithms to collaborate with. Build your neural playlist carefully. Here's a comforting perspective. Every gadget, headset, or digital experiment is just an external echo of what your brain already does. Stimulation, repetition, reward. These are ancient codes. The difference now is that we can see the code in action, maybe even tweak it. Picture a future where instead of coffee, you start your day with a 20-second neurohaptic pulse that syncs your mood. Where students wear subtle VR lenses to visualize molecules dancing in 3D. Where surgeons rehearse complex operations in simulated space until the movements burn into motor cortex. And where, hopefully, technology doesn't replace attention but refines it. You might feel a flicker of unease. What happens when machines can rewire us faster than we can consent? But then you remember, neuroplasticity always involves agency. The brain changes with use. You choose how you use it. Somewhere in your pocket, your phone buzzes again, a little digital whisper asking for attention. You smile, ignore it, and take a slow breath. In that moment, you've just hacked the system back. You've reminded your neurons who's steering, and maybe that's the real art of our age, not escaping technology, but teaching it to collaborate with our evolving minds. The electric handshake is already happening. You're just learning the choreography. You ease away from the glow of circuitry into a quieter room. No headsets, no humming devices, just you and the slow click of thought itself. The air here feels different, less charged, more reflective. This is where you learn one of neuroplasticity's most overlooked tricks. Not just learning, but unlearning. Because sometimes the real growth isn't adding new layers, it's sanding away the old ones. You can almost feel the weight of everything your brain has collected over the years. Beliefs, habits, fears, shortcuts. It's a crowded attic up there, stacked with mental furniture you no longer need. Tonight's work is to move gently among the boxes, decide what still fits, and let the rest dissolve. For centuries, people assumed forgetting was failure, a glitch in the brain's filing system. But modern neuroscience calls it essential maintenance. Forgetting, it turns out, is active work. The brain prunes connections, suppresses signals, and even recruits specialized cells to fade unneeded memories. Without this selective amnesia, your mind would drown in data. Imagine remembering every breakfast you've ever eaten. Beautiful chaos, sure, but impossible focus. Here's the mainstream fact. In 2017, researchers discovered that sleep plays a starring role in unlearning. During REM, while the hippocampus replays memories, glial cells trim weak synapses, like gardeners snipping dead leaves. The process, called synaptic downscaling, prevents overload. You wake lighter because your brain has quietly let go. Historians still argue whether ancient mystics who practiced ritual forgetting, erasing names, abandoning possessions, understood this intuitively. Perhaps their symbolic shedding was an early mindfulness exercise for cognitive balance. You don't need incense or chanting to test the idea. You just need willingness to pause and let certain thoughts stop echoing. Unlearning isn't deletion, it's adaptation. When you realize a belief no longer serves you, say that you're bad at math, or not creative, you're confronting a neural pattern, not a truth. That pattern exists because repetition made it real. The only way to overwrite it is to stop rehearsing it. Every time you interrupt the loop, the pathway weakens. Neurons that no longer fire together quietly drift apart. Think of your mind as a crowded highway system. Old routes still exist, but with disuse their pavement cracks. Traffic moves elsewhere. Eventually those roads fade back into landscape. Unlearning is just traffic redirection. Here's a quirky tidbit. Researchers studying musicians found that when they stopped practicing a specific piece, the corresponding motor map in their cortex didn't vanish. It blurred. The brain kept the outline but recycled the finer details. It's as if it said, "I'll store this blueprint, but the workshop's closed for now." The next time they revisited the piece, the map sharpened faster. Forgetting isn't destruction, it's efficient storage management. That's why deliberate unlearning can be freeing. The brain's flexibility means every belief, even the stubborn ones, remains negotiable. The trick lies in attention. What you stop feeding fades. You might test this right now. Think of something you tell yourself often, some label you wear out of habit. Maybe, "I'm terrible with directions." Notice the story without judgment. Then, imagine it as a neural path overgrown with vines. See yourself gently walking a new one instead, one where you find your way easily. The act of imagining begins the rewiring. It's not delusion, it's rehearsal. There's a fascinating mainstream experiment that proves this point. In 2001, scientists taught participants a simple motor task, then intentionally asked them to unlearn it by practicing the opposite motion. Brain scans showed that the original network deactivated as new circuits formed. The mind didn't just forget, it rewrote itself through contradiction. Historians still argue whether that principle mirrors meditation traditions like Zen, where students are asked to unlearn logic to experience insight. Koans, paradoxes, silence, all tools for shaking neurons out of their favorite patterns. Enlightenment, seen neurologically, might just be the brain rediscovering creative disorganization. Of course, not all unlearning is gentle. Some memories resist. Traumatic ones cling with biochemical glue, but even there, neuroplasticity offers mercy. Exposure therapy, EMDR, and reconsolidation research all show that revisiting painful memories in safe context lets the brain restore them with less sting. It's the same emotional editing we saw in dreams, only now you're awake and in control. The pain doesn't vanish, it transforms. A joke flickers. Maybe that's why humans invented the phrase moving on, because your neurons literally have to pack up and relocate emotional files. Unlearning also applies to relationships, careers, even self-concepts. The person you were at 20 built neural scaffolding for survival back then, but 30-year-old you doesn't need all those emergency exits. The brain holds on out of habit, but identity can be refactored. When you drop an outdated self-image, you're freeing grey matter for something new. Here's a poetic detail from neuroscience. Even your sense of body can be unlearned. Experiments with the rubber hand illusion show that people can adopt a fake hand as their own, with just synchronized touch and vision. The brain's body map is surprisingly negotiable. Likewise, self-image, mental, emotional, existential, is a flexible map updated by experience. You can redraw it. You might feel resistance to that. The mind loves familiarity, even uncomfortable kinds. But notice that discomfort is itself a sign of plasticity waking up. Those neurons are stretching, questioning, asking whether they're still needed. The ache of letting go is just rewiring in progress. Here's a fringe yet comforting notion. Some researchers propose that mindfulness-induced ego dissolution moments, where you temporarily feel your boundaries blur, are the brain's way of unlearning rigid self-maps. For a brief moment, neural hierarchies flatten, and the default mode network your inner narrator quiets. Afterwards, you often feel lighter, more connected, less defensive. That's not mysticism, That's pruning at the scale of identity. So tonight, if your mind feels cluttered, try thinking of forgetting as grace. Let a few old thoughts slip quietly off stage. You're not losing yourself, you're clearing space for upgrades. And maybe tomorrow you'll wake not knowing exactly who you are, but feeling strangely open to possibility. That's not confusion, that's neuroplasticity exhaling. Your neurons settle, tired but content. They've spent the evening not building, but undoing, and that's its own kind of construction. You open your eyes inside a landscape made not of neurons this time, but of stories, painted walls, music in the air, shared rituals that hum like collective heartbeat. You're no longer just you in isolation. You're you among others, a single node in a vast cultural brain. Because neuroplasticity doesn't end at the edges of the skull, it ripples through language, art, belief, and community. Culture rewires too, and through it, so do you. You can almost feel the shift. The mental pulse that once beat privately now syncs with rhythms outside you. Words enter your ears and reshape the architecture of thought. Symbols pass through generations, adjusting circuitry one conversation at a time. The mind that speaks is never the same as the one that stays silent. Let's start with something deceptively simple. Language. Every sentence you form trains neural networks to encode meaning, rhythm, and empathy. The brain's Broca's and Wernicke's areas handle grammar and comprehension, but the rest of the cortex joins in like backup singers. Bilingual people show thicker grey matter in these regions, proof that juggling multiple tongues literally expands the linguistic machinery. The words you use sculpt how your neurons interpret reality. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, debated for decades, suggested that language doesn't just express thought, it limits or expands it. Historians still argue whether that's fully true, but MRI studies confirm a partial echo. Speakers of languages with different temporal or spatial metaphors show distinct activation patterns when thinking about time or space. If your language treats the future as ahead versus below, your brain maps time accordingly. Vocabulary, it seems, is cognitive geometry. A quirky tidbit: in some Australian Aboriginal languages there are no words for left or right directions are always cardinal: north, south, east, west. Speakers navigate intuitively, their hippocampi humming with spatial precision. When asked to arrange a timeline of photos, they do it east to west, aligning with the sun's path. Culture literally orients the brain. Now zoom out from language to art, that ancient mirror of thought. Cave paintings from 30,000 years ago already show evidence of rhythm and pattern recognition, the same circuits used in modern creativity. The visual cortex responds to symmetry, colour and contrast. The reward system lights up when you perceive beauty. Making art, or even viewing it, floods the striatum with dopamine. Museums are, in a sense, neural gyms for aesthetic conditioning. Historians still debate what sparked that first creative explosion, the so-called cognitive revolution of early Homo sapiens. Was it the emergence of complex language, social bonding, psychedelic mushrooms? Yes, that's a real theory. Whatever the trigger, art became the earliest proof of shared neuroplasticity, individual minds sculpting collective meaning. Music too rewires across boundaries. Studies show that singing in a group synchronizes breathing, heart rate, and even neural oscillations. Choir members' brainwaves align like fireflies blinking in unison. Collective rhythm creates literal coherence. That's why national anthems, protest chants, and lullabies carry such power. They're emotional code updates distributed at scale. A joke flickers. Imagine neurons hosting a music festival, each firing in rhythm until someone yells, "Encore!" That's pretty much how synchronized oscillations look under an EEG. Culture doesn't just shape pleasure, it defines moral and social circuits too. The prefrontal cortex, home of empathy, fairness, and decision-making, lights up differently depending on cultural conditioning. In collectivist societies, brain regions linked to social identity activate when people think about others. In more individualist societies, they activate when thinking about self. The brain molds itself around the group story it's told. Think of ritual, those repeated communal actions that etch identity into muscle memory. From weddings to funerals, yoga to football chants, rituals trigger predictable neurochemical cascades. Oxytocin for bonding, endorphins for unity, serotonin for peace. It's no coincidence that shared movement makes crowds feel in sync. Ritual is the social nervous system's exercise routine. And then there's storytelling, the oldest cultural technology of all. When you hear a story, your brain doesn't sit back passively, it simulates. The same motor and emotional circuits that would activate if you were there light up as you listen. That's why narratives feel immersive. They're empathy training disguised as entertainment. Anthropologists argue that storytelling may have evolved precisely to synchronize group behavior. Shared fiction equals shared wiring. A mainstream fact. In fMRI studies, a listener's brain activity can mirror the storyteller's almost perfectly, especially in emotional or suspenseful moments. It's called neural coupling. Language becomes a literal transmission line between minds. You could call it telepathy, but slower. Historians still argue whether modern digital storytelling, movies, social media, memes, enhances this empathy or dilutes it. Our brains weren't built for constant narrative exposure, yet they adapt anyway. Every emoji, every trending sound, every shared outrage nudges neural norms. Culture updates at algorithmic speed now, and our neurons scramble to keep up. It's strange but logical. Just as an individual brain prunes and grows, so does society. Old customs fade, new ones bloom. Collective neuroplasticity in action. The invention of writing, printing, radio, and the internet were all mass rewiring events. Gutenberg gave Europe a cognitive upgrade. Smartphones gave humanity attention deficit superpowers. The same principle, stimulus, repetition, reinforcement, scales infinitely. Here's a fringe tidbit that sounds poetic but comes from data. Researchers measuring brain responses during group drumming found that synchronized movement increased not just empathy scores, but pain tolerance. Shared rhythm releases endogenous opioids. Yes, communal music is literally analgesic. That's why armies march, monks chant, and fans mosh. We're bonding through biology. Culture can heal, but it can also hijack. Repetition of fear-based messages strengthens anxiety circuits. Constant outrage rewires the amygdala for vigilance. Media algorithms like mischievous neural tutors decide what emotions get daily practice. But awareness restores choice. You can curate your cultural diet just as you curate your meals. Feed your neurons narratives of resilience, humor, and compassion. They'll build accordingly. Think of your favorite art form: painting, poetry, dance, gaming. Whatever it is, it's been shaping your brain's default settings for years. The rhythm you crave, the metaphors you favor, the aesthetics that calm you, all neural fingerprints of your cultural lineage. And yet, you are not a passive receiver. You remix. Each joke you tell, each photo you post, each lullaby you hum to someone else is a small act of neural contagion. Your personal brain adds its brushstroke to the mural of collective mind. So when you think about who you are, remember it's plural. You're the neurons that fire alone, and the ones that harmonize across a crowd. Your thoughts carry echoes of ancestors you've never met, and languages you don't even speak. Culture isn't decoration, it's distributed cognition. You stand in that vast mental gallery, listening to billions of invisible synapses humming in chorus. And as you hum back, softly, unconsciously, you participate in the great rewiring of us all. You stand in the same vast gallery, but the lights dim now, replaced by the faint red glow of tension. It feels heavier here, thicker air, quicker pulse. You've wandered into the wing of the mind carved by stress, the uninvited sculptor. If emotion and culture shape us with gentle chisels, stress wields a hammer, sometimes artfully, sometimes destructively. And yet even here, among fractures and fractures mending, neuroplasticity keeps working, stubbornly faithful to its purpose, adaptation. You can feel it immediately, how the body knows before the mind admits it. Shoulders tighten, heartbeat rises, the world narrows into sharp focus. That's the ancient alarm system firing up. Hypothalamus to adrenal glands, cortisol released like an emergency flare. For a moment, stress is useful. It wakes your neurons, sharpens attention, floods the brain with glucose. Short-term stress is a sculptor with finesse, trimming away distraction so you can focus on survival. But left on too long, that same sculptor becomes reckless. Chronic cortisol weakens the hippocampus, dulls the prefrontal cortex, and fattens the amygdala, the fear center. Your brain literally remodels toward anxiety. The phrase wired for worry isn't metaphor, it's magnetic resonance imaging. Here's the mainstream fact. prolonged stress shrinks dendritic branches in the hippocampus, impairing memory, while strengthening them in the amygdala, heightening fear responses. You remember danger more easily than peace. The wiring learns, fear keeps me alive, even when it doesn't. Historians still argue whether our ancestors experienced chronic stress the way we do now. They had lions, we have emails, which is worse. Some claim the modern brain is trapped in permanent alert mode, never getting the signal that the danger has passed. Others counter that our adaptability has also increased, that modern coping rituals from exercise to mindfulness are evolution's latest countermeasures. The debate is ongoing, but the biology is clear. Rest is not luxury, it's repair. Stress has its quirks too. A fringe yet fascinating tidbit. Moderate stress can enhance neuroplasticity by triggering the release of a protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's as if the brain, sensing challenge, begins reinforcing its own scaffolding. That's why small doses of pressure can lead to creativity and growth. The trick, of course, is dosage, enough to spark, not scorch. Think of your neurons under stress as overworked artisans. At first, they hustle beautifully, synchronizing to meet the deadline, but keep the pressure constant and they start skipping details, dropping tools, muttering about unionizing. The workshop gets sloppy. That's burnout, biological fatigue disguised as apathy. Your mind is surprisingly physical about recovery. When stress hormones rise, the vagus nerve tries to counterbalance, sending parasympathetic calm downstream, slowing the heart, relaxing muscles, whispering, "You're safe." But the vagus can only do so much without your cooperation. That's where breathing, movement, laughter and sleep become more than lifestyle advice. They're neural first aid. A joke may be too accurate. Your nervous system is like a smoke alarm that can't tell the difference between toast and wildfire. It means well, but sometimes you have to wave a towel and say, "Calm down, we're fine." Here's something quietly encouraging. Neuroplasticity ensures that calm is as trainable as stress. Practices like mindfulness and progressive relaxation strengthen the prefrontal cortex's inhibitory control over the amygdala. It's emotional strength training. Each moment of returning to breath is a repetition. Over time, the alarm quiets faster. One study at Harvard found that after 8 weeks of mindfulness training, participants showed measurable thickening in brain regions tied to emotional regulation and empathy. That's not metaphorical calm, that's anatomical calm. The stress circuits can unlearn their own urgency. Historians still debate who first noticed the link between stillness and resilience. Some credit the Stoics, others the Buddhists. Both understood, in their own languages, that response defines suffering more than stimulus. It's not what happens, but how you meet it. Modern fMRI machines have simply confirmed what ancient teachers intuited. The mind's architecture follows attention. You take a slow breath now, long enough to feel the shift, the heart easing, the chest expanding. Somewhere, neurons that have been holding tension for hours unclench. The amygdala sighs. That single exhale is a blueprint for neural repair. Of course, not all stress is mental. The brain listens to posture, diet, even light exposure. Morning sunlight triggers serotonin release. Nighttime screens trick the circadian rhythm into confusion. Sleep deprivation raises cortisol levels the next day. You can't outthink biology, you collaborate with it. Every act of self-care is also an act of rewiring. Here's a curious cultural footnote. During World War II, Londoners under bombardment reported less anxiety than during the tense calm before raids. Once the bombs fell, action replaced anticipation. The brain prefers clarity even in crisis. Ambiguity, the what if, is far more corrosive. That's the stress of modern uncertainty. The lion never pounces, it just keeps rustling the bushes. And yet your mind can build resilience from those rustles. Exposure therapy works by controlled confrontation, teaching the amygdala new data. This sound, this memory, this place is no longer lethal. Slowly neurons rewrite their threat maps. Fear fades, replaced by context. A fringe tidbit that borders on poetic. Neuroscientists studying meditation veterans have observed decreased amygdala volume, correlated with increased prefrontal cortex thickness. The architecture of fear literally shrinks while wisdom expands. You could call it spiritual remodeling, but it's also just good maintenance. The takeaway isn't to avoid stress, but to partner with it. to treat it like weather rather than doom. Let the storm come, but remember you have shelter. Every time you return to calm, you teach your neurons a lesson in recovery. Picture your brain now as a city after rain. Streets glisten, air clearer, tension drained into gutters. The storm wasn't a failure of infrastructure, it was a cleansing. The neurons whisper among themselves, "We survived. Next time, we'll weather it better." You smile slightly, realizing that resilience isn't the absence of stress, it's trust in repair. And your brain, adaptable creature that it is, has been practicing that trust all along. The storm outside your skull has passed, leaving behind a slower, lighter rhythm. You can almost hear your pulse sinking with a kind of quiet hum, the aftersound of stress unwinding. Here, the air smells faintly of cedar and stillness. This is the domain of deliberate calm, the neural garden of meditation, mindfulness, and the tiny miracles they produce. You can almost feel the mind's tide retreating, revealing what it built in secret while you were simply breathing. Close your eyes for a moment in imagination. Behind the eyelids, your brain's default mode network, the one responsible for daydreams and self-referential chatter, begins to dim. In its place, the present tense circuits awaken. This is the paradox of stillness. You're doing nothing, yet your neurons are busier than ever, reorganizing, balancing, reinforcing peace like it's muscle memory. Here's a mainstream fact that used to sound like mysticism until scanners proved it. Long-term meditation thickens the prefrontal cortex and anterior cingulate cortex, regions that govern attention, compassion, and emotional regulation. It's gym membership for the mind, except the weights are silence and breath. Historians still argue whether the Buddha himself understood this process as neurological. Some say his description of the middle path parallels what modern psychology calls homeostasis, balance between over-arousal and apathy. Others see it as poetic coincidence. Either way, the 2,500-year-old instruction, observe, breathe, let go, turns out to be exquisite neuroscience. You can picture the mechanism unfolding. When you focus on breath, sensory data from your lungs, ribs, and diaphragm flood the insula, that body map region we visited earlier. The prefrontal cortex notices, evaluates, and gently silences the limbic noise. Cortisol levels fall. The vagus nerve stretches like a cat, purring parasympathetic calm through your organs. This is the neurochemical fingerprint of peace. A quirky tidbit. Monks who've practiced decades of loving-kindness meditation show unusually high gamma wave activity, even at rest. Gamma oscillations, fast, synchronized rhythms, are associated with insight and integration. It's as if their neurons have learned to sing in harmony. When researchers asked one monk how it felt, he smiled and said, "Like sunlight inside the skull." Hard to beat as a scientific description, but don't let the robes fool you. You don't need a monastery for this. A few minutes of focused breathing reshapes circuits in measurable ways. Every exhale slightly slows heart rate variability, signaling safety. Each moment you notice distraction and return to focus, you strengthen the anterior cingulate's capacity for redirection. Meditation isn't about emptying the mind. It's about teaching attention to pivot gracefully. Historians still debate whether early Christian mystics, Sufi poets, and Zen monks were tapping into the same phenomenon through different metaphors. Silence, prayer, whirling, chanting, all alter neural rhythms, increasing coherence across hemispheres. The tools differ, but the target is identical. Calm as cognitive reconfiguration. You might test a small version now. Inhale slowly through your nose, count 4. Exhale for 6. Feel the brief pause after. During that exhale, your heart and brain synchronize for a beat. The vagus nerve hums its approval. You've just run a 5-second neuroplasticity drill. Do that enough, and the wiring stays calmer even when life gets loud. Here's another curious fact. Regular mindfulness practice increases grey matter density in the hippocampus, the same region stress tends to shrink. The brain quite literally rebuilds where fear once lived. Trauma meets its antidote in breath. There's humour tucked in that biology too. Imagine telling your amygdala, "Don't panic, we're just sitting." It twitches, confused, then eventually shrugs and starts attending yoga. Meditation's effects spill beyond emotion. Focused attention training enhances the brain's executive functions, working memory, task switching, even creativity. Some companies now pay employees to meditate, though history shows the monks did it first without HR approval. A fringe tidbit worth savouring. A 2014 study found that people who practice compassion meditation could increase activity in the vagus nerve enough to synchronize their heart rate with those nearby. Literal empathy resonance. You calm yourself, others calm too. Biology meets kindness halfway, and the results persist. Neuroimaging shows that even after meditation sessions end, resting state connectivity remains altered for hours, sometimes days. Your neurons remember serenity like a melody they can hum later under stress. You can almost see it inside your head, tiny sparks of focus forming bridges across hemispheres. The corpus callosum thickens, information flows more freely. The default chatter quiets. For a brief moment, the sense of I softens, replaced by simple awareness. Some practitioners describe it as spaciousness, others as unity. Neuroscientists describe it as reduced activity in the posterior cingulate cortex. Tomato, tomato. What's astonishing is how accessible it is. A few mindful breaths during a chaotic day can tilt your neurochemistry from survival to growth. BDNF rises, inflammation markers drop, telomeres, those little chromosome caps linked to aging, lengthen modestly. You're not just calming down, you're subtly rejuvenating. Historians still argue whether humanity's oldest rituals, fire-gazing, storytelling, communal prayer, were accidental mass meditations. Sitting together, focusing on a single rhythm, synchronizing heartbeats, it fits the description. Long before EEG caps, people discovered collective serenity by instinct. Here's the beautiful paradox. Meditation doesn't erase thought, it reveals thought as transient. Every time you watch a worry drift past without grabbing it, neurons learn that not all input demands reaction. Over time, the default mode of urgency rewires into one of ease, and that's where the miracles hide, in the tiny pause between stimulus and response. That half-second delay you've earned through breath gives you freedom. The brain that once reacted automatically now chooses consciously. You've rewired reflex into reflection. A quiet joke ripples through the stillness. Your neurons are probably gossiping right now. He's doing that weird nothing again, but wow, we're thriving. As you breathe, the line between biology and spirit blurs. Neurons fire in sync, hormones hum in equilibrium, and what began as self-regulation feels like awe. The brain loves patterns. Meditation teaches it the simplest one. Inhale, exhale, repeat. So you sit there a moment longer in your mind's quiet temple, aware of the pulse in your fingertips, the gentle weight of air, the widening space around every thought. Somewhere deep inside, the circuitry of chaos is being repurposed into circuitry of peace. When you open your metaphorical eyes, you feel it. Not enlightenment exactly, but alignment. The gentle knowing that your brain can change toward calm, again and again, as faithfully as breath itself. The quiet lingers as you sit there, but in its stillness, something curious begins to hum. A question that glows faintly in the dim corridors of your mind. What if belief itself, not chemicals or electrodes or breath, could shape the brain just as profoundly? You've heard of the placebo effect, maybe even laughed at it. Sugar pills curing headaches, fake surgeries easing pain. But tonight, you step closer and the laughter softens. Because here, in the strange labyrinth of expectation, neuroplasticity reveals one of its most poetic tricks. Belief rewires biology. You can almost feel the shift when it happens. A thought becomes conviction, and the body listens. Heart rate slows, neurotransmitters adjust, immune cells mobilize. It's as though faith, whether in medicine, ritual, or hope itself, hands the brain a blueprint, and the brain, eager to please, starts building reality to match. The mainstream fact is staggering enough. Clinical trials routinely show placebo responses rivaling actual drugs. Patients given inert pills often experience real physiological changes, dopamine surges, pain reduction, even improved motor function in Parkinson's disease. Their neurons don't know the capsule is empty. They respond to meaning, not matter. Historians still argue whether early healers, shamans, and priests understood this consciously. Perhaps they discovered through ceremony what we now measure in fMRI scans, that belief can activate endogenous healing systems, the chants, the smoke, the touch, They were all cues to trigger the brain's pharmacy. Faith as pharmacology. A quirky tidbit. During brain imaging studies, participants told they were receiving morphine, but actually saline, showed identical activation in pain relief pathways as those given real morphine. The illusion summoned chemistry. It's the mind's version of forged currency that somehow still spends. Belief doesn't stop at pills. Athletes given performance-enhancing oxygenated water, ordinary H2O in disguise, run faster. Students told they have innate math talent perform better on tests. The trick isn't deceit, it's permission. Expectation unlocks effort. The brain aligns physiology with predicted outcome. But the placebo's shadow twin, the nocebo, reminds us belief cuts both ways. Expect side effects, and the body obliges. Nausea, headaches, fatigue, all conjured from expectation. Your neurons are terrible cynics when you give them dark material to work with. It's neuroplastic storytelling gone rogue. That's the essence of belief's power. It's simulation so convincing the body forgets its pretend. Your prefrontal cortex, home of imagination, communicates with the limbic system, home of emotion, and together they send signals that alter hormonal release, immune response, even gene expression. Thoughts become messengers, and the body, ever cooperative, obeys. It makes sense if you think about it. The brain's prime directive is prediction. Every second it forecasts what's coming based on past data, adjusting perception accordingly. When belief tells it, "This will heal you," it doesn't wait for proof. It starts adjusting toward health immediately. You don't see reality first and then believe. You believe, and then you see. Historians still debate whether this predictive model of the brain, the idea that perception itself is a controlled hallucination, undermines our notion of truth or enhances it. Either way, the implication is dizzying. Your experience of reality is always a co-authored draft between world and mind. Imagine walking into a clinic where the walls smell faintly of antiseptic, a doctor smiles, and soft beeps punctuate the air. Your body relaxes before treatment even begins because it recognizes the setting as healing territory. That environmental placebo primes the brain to cooperate. Hospitals, prayer circles, spa playlists, they're all context cues for neurochemical alignment. A joke drifts through the sterile air. If the brain were a gullible friend, it'd be the one buying every self-help book and actually feeling better. But that gullibility is evolutionary genius. It lets hope manipulate chemistry. Placebo power doesn't just soothe symptoms, it can create new skills. In experiments, people told they'd received a creativity-boosting pill, produced more original ideas than control groups. Nothing chemical changed, just permission to innovate. The prefrontal cortex, freed from doubt, loosened its filters. You can almost hear the neurons sigh. Finally, we can try weird stuff again. And belief's effects are cumulative. The more you witness your own improvement, whether through therapy, habit, or ritual, the stronger your brain's self-healing loop becomes. You build confidence circuits that reinforce expectation of success, which in turn fuels actual neuroplastic growth. Faith begets function. Here's another mainstream marvel: open-label placebos. Pills explicitly labeled placebo, contains no active ingredients, still work when taken sincerely. Patients improve even when told it's just placebo. Honesty doesn't break the spell, participation does. The act of ritualized care, taking the pill, following the schedule, engages the body's healing algorithms regardless of chemical content. You might call it the neuroscience of sincerity. Historians still argue whether the placebo effect should be celebrated as a tool or dismissed as trickery. The medical world hesitates because it blurs the boundary between biology and psychology. But in truth, that boundary never existed. Your neurons and your thoughts are partners, not rivals. Think about prayer, affirmation, superstition, all those tiny rituals humans cling to when faced with the unknown. To the rational mind, they look irrational. To the brain, they're instructions. We're doing something. Action, even symbolic, turns helplessness into agency. And agency rewires despair into resilience. There's a gentle irony here. Science spent centuries trying to strip belief out of medicine, only to rediscover it as an essential ingredient. The brain heals best when it's invited to believe it can. You might notice it in your own body right now, the subtle lift that comes from remembering you're adaptable. That sense of maybe I can is a chemical event. Dopamine hinting at possibility, endorphins softening tension, serotonin smoothing the edges. Belief is biochemistry with good PR. A fringe tidbit to end on. In one study, researchers applied fake acupuncture needles, retractable tips that never pierce skin, and still measured pain relief. The patient's brains lit up in sensory areas as if touched. Illusion produced reality. The scientists, amused and humbled, called it the mind's sleight of hand. So as you rest in this chapter, think of belief not as naivety but as collaboration. Your brain is a storyteller that edits itself to match the narrative it trusts. Feed it faith in recovery, curiosity, hope, and it will sculpt accordingly. Somewhere deep inside, neurons are listening right now, adjusting circuits in response to expectation. And you, gently smiling at the audacity of it all, are both the believer and the rewiring itself. The air around you feels steadier now, the buzz of belief settling into something more grounded, like roots growing quietly beneath the soil. Tonight you wander deeper into the long corridor between inheritance and experience, where a question glows softly at the walls. How much of you was written before you ever began to live? Here, the letters of DNA and the sparks of daily life weave and rewrite each other. A duet so intimate it's hard to tell who's leading. You've heard the argument before: nature versus nurture, genes versus environment, destiny versus decision. But under a microscope, those opposites blur. Every thought you've ever had has brushed against your genome. Every gene you carry has whispered instructions to your neurons. What you are is conversation, not code. Let's start with the mainstream fact that makes textbooks sound like poetry. Roughly half the variation in traits like intelligence, temperament, or vulnerability to stress can be traced to genetics. The other half comes from experience, but half and half doesn't mean a coin toss, it means interaction. Genes set potentials, experience chooses which ones wake. Picture your DNA not as a blueprint but as a library, 23 pairs of chromosomes lined with silent volumes. Life is the librarian, deciding which books to open, which to shelve. This selection process, called epigenetics, is the brain's bridge between biology and behavior. Chemical tags called methyl groups sit on genes like sticky notes, turning them up or down in response to environment. Stress can silence one gene, compassion can reactivate another. The genome is written in ink, but the annotations are in pencil. Historians still argue whether Lamarck, the 18th century naturalist mocked for suggesting traits acquired in life could be inherited, was completely wrong or prematurely right. Modern epigenetics grants impartial redemption. While DNA sequence doesn't change, the expression of genes can, and some of those epigenetic marks may pass to offspring. In mice, trauma leaves molecular fingerprints detectable in later generations. Life's lessons apparently can echo through bloodlines. A quirky tidbit: in 2013, researchers trained mice to fear the smell of cherry blossoms by pairing it with mild electric shocks. Their offspring, never shocked, never exposed, still shuddered at the same scent. DNA analysis showed methylation changes on the odorant receptor gene, memory written into molecules, the grandchildren of fear reacting to perfume. But before you blame ancestors for every quirk or anxiety, remember the dialogue goes both ways. Positive experiences rewrite gene expression too. Exercise boosts BDNF production, enhancing synaptic growth. Social connection raises oxytocin levels, which in turn modulates stress-related genes. Gratitude, laughter, even art, all biochemical messages reminding DNA it's safe to flourish. Think of it like jazz. Genes lay the score, but life improvises. The melody shifts with every choice, every heartbreak, every act of kindness. That's why identical twins who share 100% of their DNA grow more distinct as they age. Their epigenetic landscapes diverge, shaped by diet, sleep, relationships, and perspective. Their fingerprints match, their neural wiring does not. Historians still debate which moment in human evolution tipped the balance, when experience began to override raw heredity. Some point to the rise of language, others to culture's ability to store knowledge outside the body. Once we learned to teach, our environment became an external genome. What the first teacher passed down wasn't DNA, but design. Here's another mainstream marvel. In adults who learn new skills, genes related to synaptic plasticity literally switch on. MRI scans confirm that sustained learning increases the expression of CREB and other transcription factors that tell neurons, grow more receptors, build more spines. Learning writes chemical footnotes into the genome. Experience isn't content with being temporary, it insists on inscription. You can feel that in your own body. When you decide to start meditating or exercising or forgiving, you're not just shaping behavior, you're modulating gene expression in your hippocampus and immune system. Epigenetics makes every small kindness, internal or external, a biochemical vote for growth. There's humour in that. Your DNA isn't the strict parent you thought it was. It's more like a cooperative roommate constantly redecorating with you. A fringe tidbit that's equal parts eerie and hopeful. Researchers studying Holocaust survivors found unique methylation patterns on stress regulation genes, patterns also detectable in their children. But therapy and supportive environments in later generations seem to reverse the effect. Healing, it turns out, can be hereditary too. Neuroplasticity doesn't stop at neurons, it ripples into nucleotides. If you zoom out, the pattern feels cosmic. The universe builds stars from hydrogen, cells from carbon, consciousness from chance. And now you, this walking bundle of chemical poetry, are rewriting the script with each experience. You're not the sum of your genes, you're the sum of how your life has read them. Still, there's comfort in the scaffolding of heredity. Genes don't dictate destiny, but they provide rhythm. Your preference for certain foods, your ease with certain skills, your quickness to laugh, all baseline melodies written in molecular ink. Experience adds harmonies, improvises tempo, sometimes remixes the song entirely. Historians still argue whether modern society's obsession with genetic testing has made people more self-aware or more fatalistic. We map our ancestry like cartographers of fate, forgetting that each day we redraw the borders. Maybe the real gift of understanding genetics isn't control, it's collaboration. Knowing the instrument helps you play it better. You might pause here, thinking of your own lineage. What strengths did you inherit that you take for granted? What fears feel older than you are? Each is a whisper from molecules sculpted by centuries of adaptation. They aren't chains, they're echoes, waiting to be sung differently. Imagine yourself as a living feedback loop, genes tuning to experience, experience editing genes, both shaping the brain that narrates this story. You're a fractal of evolution, microscopic, immense, perpetually unfinished. A quiet joke hums through the DNA helix. Your ancestors survived meteors, plagues, and Mondays so you could overthink text messages. Their resilience is literally encoded in your cells, and that resilience is plasticity's oldest ancestor. The first single cell that responded to change set this lineage in motion. You're its current chapter, still writing. So you stand at this intersection of biology and biography, feeling the pulse of both, old code humming under new light. The genes built the instrument, but experience writes the song. And tonight, you realize with gentle wonder, the melody has always been yours to improvise. You stand now in the half-lit space where science begins to sound like prophecy, where the words next and maybe shimmer together in the air. You've followed neuroplasticity from birth to belief, from cell to culture, and yet the story isn't finished. The brain, ever hungry for improvement, is already reaching beyond itself, designing the tools that will someday design it. Welcome to the frontier, the future of plasticity. You can feel the electricity of it. Labs glowing at midnight, young scientists with caffeine-stained notebooks, algorithms humming lullabies to neurons. The next era of brain change won't rely on patience or prayer alone. It will use lasers, nanobots, and code. Humanity, once sculpted by evolution, has quietly stolen the chisel. Let's begin with something tangible, optogenetics, a word that sounds like witchcraft but is pure physics and biology holding hands. In this technique, researchers insert light-sensitive proteins into specific neurons, then use flashes of blue or yellow light to turn those neurons on or off with millisecond precision. Imagine being able to flip a memory like a light switch to activate courage or silence pain. Already, in mice, scientists have erased fear responses or restored lost memories with a single beam. The mind as cinema, directed by lasers. Here's a mainstream fact that could belong to science fiction. Experiments at MIT's Tonegawa lab showed that false memories could be implanted in mice by lighting up specific hippocampal circuits. The animals remembered events that never happened. reacting emotionally to pure invention. Historians still argue whether this should terrify or thrill us. It proves how plastic the brain truly is, and how fragile truth can be when memory is editable. You picture it, a future clinic where PTSD might be healed by gently reprogramming trauma pathways, where addiction loops could be dimmed like lights in a room. The same technology that terrifies ethicists could give peace to millions. The moral hinges, as always, on the hands that hold the switch, and optogenetics is only the overture. Next come nanostimulation and closed-loop implants. Tiny devices, thinner than a hair, able to monitor brain activity in real time and deliver corrective nudges when needed. Early versions already help Parkinson's patients regain control of movement. But researchers dream bigger. Devices that adjust mood, sharpen focus, perhaps enhance empathy. Your own brain, coached by circuitry smaller than dust. A quirky tidbit. Engineers at Stanford recently created neural dust, microscopic sensors that can float in the bloodstream, reading and transmitting neural data wirelessly. They look like glitter under the microscope, except they can eavesdrop on your thoughts. A poet might call it consciousness confetti. Then there's AI-guided rewiring. Imagine artificial intelligence analysing your brain scans, spotting inefficient networks, and prescribing personalised cognitive training. Early prototypes already exist, apps that adapt in real time to strengthen underused pathways. One day, AI might be less a tutor and more a neural collaborator, whispering to your synapses, "Try connecting this way instead." Historians still debate whether this will make us more human or less. When machines can edit emotion, what happens to the meaning of feeling? When focus and calm become downloadable skills, will struggle still matter? Philosophers are sharpening pencils while engineers sharpen lasers. And yet, for all the grandeur of the lab, some of the most promising frontiers are profoundly gentle. Psychedelic-assisted therapy, once taboo, is being re-examined as a chemical key to unlock plasticity. Substances like psilocybin and MDMA temporarily relax rigid neural patterns, allowing new emotional connections to form. Under guidance, patients rewrite decades of fear in hours. Brain scans show increased connectivity. Regions that rarely communicate begin chatting like old friends at a reunion. The self becomes fluid again. You could almost hear the neurons sigh. Finally, some breathing room. Of course, caution is required. Unsupervised rewiring can become chaos. Plasticity without direction is like fire without hearth. That's why researchers emphasize integration, the process of guiding new neural growth with intention and care. The future of change will demand not just technology, but wisdom. Here's a fascinating mainstream development. Scientists are exploring neurogenesis boosters, compounds that encourage the birth of new neurons in the adult brain. BDNF enhancers, intermittent fasting, aerobic exercise, even certain flavonoids in dark chocolate all play roles. The elixir of youth might taste suspiciously like cocoa and restraint. Meanwhile, gene editing hovers on the horizon. CRISPR technology can already modify DNA sequences responsible for neural development. In theory, it could one day amplify learning ability or resilience. In practice, ethics slams the brakes. Historians still argue whether this line, rewriting the writers of thought, is one humanity should ever cross. And yet, curiosity keeps pressing forward. A team in Switzerland recently mapped connectome editing, using precise magnetic fields to rearrange white matter tracks non-invasively. Early tests suggest temporary boosts in memory and motor coordination. No implants, no drugs, just guided magnetism. You start to wonder if the future brain will have more in common with symphonies than circuits, tuned rather than treated. A joke flickers, half nervous, half hopeful. One day your neurologist might prescribe 3 songs in B minor and a walk in strobe light. But maybe the most radical frontier isn't mechanical at all, it's ecological. Scientists are realizing the brain's health depends profoundly on the microbiome, the trillions of bacteria living in your gut. Some strains produce neurotransmitters, others influence inflammation and mood. The phrase, "trust your gut," was never metaphor. It was molecular advice. The future of neuroplasticity might involve probiotics instead of processors. As you drift through these possibilities, excitement hums with unease. So much potential, so many unknowns. Yet beneath the gadgets and glitter, the same rule persists. Repetition, attention, connection. Whether change comes through lasers or laughter, the principle remains the same. The brain responds to engagement. Historians of the future will look back on this era as the adolescence of consciousness. Awkward, brilliant, experimental. They'll argue whether we played too much with our wiring or finally learned to evolve on purpose. You might smile at the thought. Maybe the ultimate neurotechnology isn't external at all. Maybe it's kindness, curiosity, love, the original stimulators of neural growth. Every hug, every moment of genuine awe, every act of learning still outperforms the most advanced machine in the lab. So you stand in this imagined future, watching neurons flicker like city lights under new suns, and you realize, progress doesn't mean replacing the human brain. It means finally listening to it. The tools will come and go, but the mission is eternal to keep becoming one synapse at a time, and somewhere in that glimmering horizon, your neurons pulse softly, already preparing for whatever tomorrow's miracle brings. You return at last to quieter ground. No laboratories this time, no lasers humming behind your eyelids, no diagrams of molecules behaving heroically, just the low thrum of blood in your ears, the pulse of your own breath, and that faint warmth behind your temples where everything you've just learned is still settling into place. This is where the journey circles back, to the simplest and strangest truth of all. The self you call I has never been a statue. It has always been scaffolding, a work site under soft construction lights. You think of how it began, those first newborn neurons reaching toward one another in the dark, tiny hands of electricity finding partners, building bridges. You were never a finished product even then. You were choreography waiting for music. Every memory, every habit, every heartbreak, every spark of wonder has added new rhythms to the dance. Even now, as you listen, neurons are extending fresh filaments, pruning what no longer fits, balancing the ledger of your past and present. Neuroplasticity isn't just your brain's party trick. It's your life's ongoing autobiography, written in ion exchange and sleep, in laughter and loss. The brain you woke up with this morning isn't the one you'll take to bed tonight. You've revised yourself dozens of times today already, when you learned something new, forgave someone, chose patience over anger, or even noticed the color of the sky. Each small act of awareness was a neural vote for a slightly different version of you. Here's the mainstream fact that still humbles every neuroscientist alive. There's no single region in your brain where you live. Identity is a moving conversation between memory, emotion, body, and story, a consensus built moment by moment. When one area goes quiet, others step up, improvising selfhood like musicians trading solos. Consciousness isn't a throne, it's a jazz ensemble. Historians still argue whether this knowledge should comfort or unsettle us. Does the absence of a permanent self mean freedom or fragility? Some philosophers cheer, calling it liberation from ego. Others mourn the loss of solidity. But the evidence, and maybe your intuition too, point to something gentler. You are continuity made of change. The mind's mutability is not a flaw, it's the entire point. You might recall the quirky details from earlier, the blind painters, the monks radiating gamma waves, the mice inheriting the memory of cherries. All of them prove the same thesis in different dialects, that existence is revision. The universe has always favored adaptability over permanence. Stars explode to seed new stars. Forests burn to renew soil. Brains forget so they can learn again. If you close your eyes right now, you can sense the current of that process running through you. It's not mystical, it's mechanical and miraculous at once. The sensation of being you is a neural symphony constantly retuning its instruments. A small joke ripples through your tired synapses. Your brain is basically that friend who keeps redecorating the apartment, never satisfied, always rearranging the furniture of thought. But it's also the friend who never gives up on making the place a little cozier. Look back at the roads you've travelled through this long story. You've seen neurons dance, synapses prune, children's minds bloom, injuries rewrite their own rules. You've watched emotions carve deep grooves, only to be smoothed by time and attention. You've met technology's shimmering promises and belief's quiet miracles. And through it all, the same pattern has pulsed, awareness shaping structure. Even culture and ancestry, those vast invisible forces, are threads in the same tapestry, influencing but never dictating. Every generation inherits a brain architecture and then remodels it through art, conversation, and curiosity. You're both heir and architect, both legacy and rebellion. So what happens next? The answer, of course, is still forming. You will continue to practice, forget, learn, unlearn, love, and heal. The body will whisper to the brain will whisper back. Some nights you'll dream repairs, some mornings you'll wake rewired. Change won't always be comfortable, but comfort was never evolution's goal. Adaptation was. Historians of the future, if we're lucky enough to have them, will still debate what consciousness truly is. Maybe they'll describe it as data, maybe as poetry. But you, standing here at the end of this journey, already know what matters more than definition: experience. You are what your neurons do when they fall in love with possibility. You realize now that selfhood isn't something you defend, it's something you compose. Every word you speak, every kindness you extend, every moment of curiosity adds a new verse. The song never ends, it only modulates. The realization arrives quietly, like a tide against sand. You are rebuildable. Not someday, not metaphorically, but literally. Your thoughts are tools. Your attention is clay. You can sculpt peace where chaos once lived, build empathy where cynicism took root, invite wonder back into corners you thought were closed. Every breath is another chance to begin the renovation. A final, soft laugh trembles in your chest, because of course the universe would design something as paradoxical as a self that survives by changing. And of course the brain, that squishy miracle, would make sure you never run out of room to grow. So you take one more deep breath, letting it expand through lungs and neurons alike. You exhale the old, inhale the possible. The construction lights flicker off, leaving only a faint golden glow where your next thought will soon be born. And somewhere deep within, your neurons whisper to one another, pleased, we're still building. So now, as you settle back into stillness, let the noise of knowledge soften into something slower, something warm. The science fades to background hum. The words dissolve like mist. All that remains is the steady rhythm of your breath, your pulse, the quiet awareness that everything inside you is still gently adjusting. Your neurons are winding down their conversation, filing away the night's discoveries, cushioning thought with rest. You don't have to remember every fact, every term, every glittering detail. The remembering is already happening for you, below awareness, in the silent weave of synapses connecting new patterns. The lesson has sunk deeper than language. It's nestled now in the texture of calm. Breathe in, feel the cool air slip past the back of your throat. Breathe out, slow and easy. Each exhale is a small act of letting go, a miniature rehearsal for tomorrow's unlearning. The muscles in your jaw unclench, your shoulders drop their guard. You're safe in the simplest, oldest way. Oxygen in, carbon dioxide out, the loop continuing without your supervision. Your body hums faintly with gratitude for the pause. It knows how to rebuild even in rest. Somewhere behind the eyelids, neurons flicker once more, then dim like candles at closing time. The last thing they say, perhaps, is thank you for paying attention, for believing in their quiet labor. Now drift. Let the edges blur. Let thought slide into that soft grey where sleep begins. The brain will handle the rest. Tomorrow, when you wake, you'll be slightly different. Stronger, calmer, maybe kinder. But for now, you don't have to be anything at all, just this breath, just this moment.